Phone's on silent, computer on silent.
Welcome to Hardly Initiated. It is your host, Tyshawn Jackson, and we are in here on another Monday night with my co-host, Ryan Ketchens.
Absolutely.
And it's a show you don't want to miss.
Yeah.
We have put together one of the most important conversations of the year, a debate between my Christians and my Pan-Africanists. Is Christianity the white man's religion? Let's find out tonight. Let's get to it.
Nice.
It is that time. It is that time, family.
Listen, y'all better pull out your notebooks tonight because I think the conversation is really about to get detailed.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. And, we've been doing a little bit of study, too. You know, we got introduced, which I'm shocked because I had never heard of it before 2 nights ago, the documentary Unspoken.
Shout out to Lisa Fields and the team that put that together, the Jude 3 project that put that together.
Excellent. And I'm going to be honest, man, because Hidden Colors was one of my favorite documentaries.
Right.
And the way I felt after I watched Hidden Colors, when I watched Unspoken, I'm like, we got some things to discuss.
We got some really important things to discuss. Yeah. And it's the thing about that is, Hidden Colors was a mostly anti-Christian documentary.
It was.
And a lot of the ideology that it gave and what it taught. So it's interesting, moving from Hidden Colors, which I watched 8 years ago, to where we are today, getting deeper in our faith. There's obviously still a lot of questions that we still have specific to our upbringing, specific to our culture, that I just feel like have not been answered.
Yep.
That was addressed in that documentary. And for those who have not seen it, just hang tight. You're in the right place because it's going to be an important conversation tonight.
I would agree. And I would say we have a majority Christian faith-based audience, but we sent out that email and we asked, sent out the email asking people, hey, what do they think about this conversation we're ready to have tonight? Is Christianity a white man's religion? And we've already received a ton of emails from both sides of the spectrum. So I think it's very important that we discuss this.
Yes.
And, once I was watching the documentary, I watched it 2 times already. Once I was watching, it kind of made me feel like a lot of pride. It's a connection that I think I did not have with Christianity prior. It's almost like being a fair weather fan for the Falcons, right? As long as we up, I'm good, I'm in it. But when we down, we got a 1-16 season. I'm not really strongly connected. But I think this brought to me that missing piece, and I really want to bring this conversation to the forefront.
No, this is important, guys. It's actually been recorded that over the last 20 years, 19% of black youth have walked away from Christianity, mainly because the church, I would say, has failed to, answer some very difficult questions unique to our experience. We've heard time and time again different opinions around Christianity being the white man's religion. It was beaten to us in slavery. Today I really want to do a better job searching for truth around this conversation. Correct. And we start with this debate with these 4 gentlemen. We've brought together 2 Christian apologists and 2 Pan-Africanists, mostly their worldview. We'll get a bit deeper into it soon. So let's actually get to introducing these brothers. If you're ready in the chat, drop a ready for the conversation that we're getting into here tonight.
Go ahead and give it to him.
The first one I want to, the first brother here, yeah. Thank you to this brother Damon for going ahead and recommending the documentary we're talking about. We got Damon Richardson in the building. He is a theologian, apologist, and founder of Urban Logia. Please make sure I'm saying that right. Urban Logia, is that correct?
Logia.
Yeah. Urban Logia Ministries, most known for addressing complex theological issues and defending the Christian faith. He's in the building with us. Welcome, Damon, for being in here, brother.
Amen. Good to be here. Glad to be part of this conversation and excited about where it's going to go.
We're excited to hear from you. And then that last part, known for defending the Christian faith. That's strong.
Yes,
that's strong. That is strong, man. He's truly a scholar. Damon was one of my favorite speakers in that documentary as well, which was pretty incredible. So I'm excited to get into it. And right next to him, I got the brother that actually introduced him to us. We got a brother here who's a speaker, pastor, and founder of Vision Church in North Kakalaki, all right, author of the book Whitewashing of Christianity. Man, listen, Gay argues that Christianity has been inaccurately portrayed as a white religion, marginalizing its African roots and contributions from people of color. And today, he is with Hardly Initiated. Welcome, Pastor Jerome, to Hardly Initiated.
Fellas, I'm glad to be on here. I'm excited about the dialogue. I'm looking forward to a respectful dialogue. And again, I'm just truly honored to be on this platform.
Absolutely. Welcome to the platform, Jerome, and we are excited to hear from you as well. Now, on the opposing end, we also have some equally strong and accomplished brothers. And let's start off with Malik Dexter, a Pan-Africanist and son of Southern Baptist Garveyite preacher. Malik believes that the Bible is not a tool of liberation for black people and instead is schema for Western expansionism.
Wow, strong
Very
words.
strong.
But
Very
welcome,
strong.
Malik, to Hardly Initiated. It's going to be a conversation.
Hey,
Hey,
He's listening. Enough said.
He said,
Enough
I'm
said.
ready to get into it.
He
Nothing
ready.
else to
He's
say
ready.
here.
Absolutely. And finally, but last but not least, Jared Grant, also a Pan-Africanist, political scientist, university professor, and speaker devoted to community activism. Now, Jared strongly believes that Christianity is indeed a white man's religion.
There you go. And we're going to talk about it here today. Welcome to Hardly Initiated, my brother, okay?
greetings, brother.
Absolutely. Now, guys, I do want to set some expectations for tonight. So, audience, you're listening. The initiates, tonight's conversation will cover key issues one by one. You guys know how we do it. To our panelists, I know I don't have to state this, but let's just do it anyway. Please refrain from personal attacks and excessive interruptions. To our viewers and initiates, of course, guys, keep the comments respectful. I know a lot of you guys are on opposing sides of this thing, but please just make sure we're still open to sharing our views. Moderators, listen. It's okay when people share other views, okay? Just don't let them spam the chat. Also, audience polls will be launched prior to each segment and will close at the segment's conclusion because, of course, we want to get an idea of what you guys think. And don't forget, we are highlighting super chats all night at the end of each segment, each conversation. So please, anything over $20 will be read live on air by Tyshawn or myself. So please keep that comment. And also, guys, towards the end of the debate, we will open up the initiation hotline so we can actually hear live from our initiates in terms of what you guys think. And just in general, if you have some very opposing views than our panelists that we have this evening, we want you to let us know tonight.
There you have it. And for those of you who already don't know, for this month, we're doing something special for the Fight the Flesh bracelets. Anybody that cops one and you type in live, you can get 10% off. So go ahead and get that. It is an armor. It is a reminder in the war that we in. All
Big
right?
facts. I wear mine every day.
Every day,
Shower,
baby.
everywhere. Gym, everywhere. You got to keep that thing equipped.
You got to keep it equipped. A good trinket for you to have on your day-to-day, and also a really great Christmas gift. Type live in the discount code, get 10% off. But I want to go ahead now and let's get to it. Fellas, let's get into the conversation here, okay? Because starting off the conversation, obviously, the broad conversation we're having, all right, is Christianity the white man's religion? And we've created some questions that we're going to get into. Many of the guys were not informed of what we're talking about, but you guys are already and have prepared for this conversation. So here's where I want to start, guys. And we're going to start with, I actually want to start with my brother Malik on this side here, because does Christianity liberate or oppress black people?
All right. Well, if you would allow me, I would like to respond to that question plus the opening question.
Sure.
Is Christianity a white man's religion? So my answer is no, it's a white man's culture. Okay? And the culture of Europeans have been deified by African people. And in turn, we worship their culture as religion. Okay? So now, does Christianity liberate or oppress blacks? I think my opening statement, addresses that. Clearly, every statistic that we have about the black family, black economics, black health, and so on and so on and so on, have occurred under the overwhelming influence of our religious relationship to Christianity. So have we been liberated using Christianity? And the answer is statistically no.
There you have it. I want to give I want to give Jared an opportunity to respond as well, because this is a very important question. And where we starting here, feel free, guys. You guys can fully contextualize. There's no time limit. I want you guys to really be able to get your thoughts off in this important conversation. But if you can go ahead and answer for us, does Christianity liberate or oppress Black people?
Right. Thank you all, and greetings, all brothers and everyone. I appreciate being on this platform. Answer to your question is, of course, yes. I really loved Brother Melick's answer. People deified the culture, their culture anyway. And Christianity, especially in the form that it took after 325 AD, is in the formation of European thought and thinking and ideation. Therefore, it deifies European culture and it oppresses Black culture. For the last 2,000 years, since Christianity has been here, has been one of the worst periods for African people, for Black folk. Remember, we're the oldest people on the planet. And so we have thousands upon thousands of years of freedom and liberation of our civilizations. We civilized this earth. And therefore, we have all of the proven, just not statistics, but just all of the proven history and culture of the most spiritual people on the planet, which is us. And once we came up under the guard of another culture, of another people, we began to take on the trappings of those folks and believing in things that, though it comes from us, it was bastardized by them. And we have been professing and going by the bastardized form that was created by Europeans.
Wow. Now, I want to open the floor up to Damon and Jerome to give us some perspective on this. And guys, the same question posed to you guys: does Christianity liberate or oppress Black people? And I'll add on to that, why might someone think that Christianity actually oppresses Black people?
So yeah, I'd like to respond. Gerard mentioned 325, and that's a huge misnomer by a lot of Pan-Africanists that may be unfamiliar with what actually happened at the councils. So 325 is the Council of Nicaea. The Council of Nicaea actually had tons of African bishops. The two primary voices was an African man by the name of Athanasius and another by the name of Arius. And the issue at hand at the Council of Nicaea was the essence of Jesus. Hence, in the Nicene Creed, it says begotten and not made. So Christianity was not created at Nicaea. It was the essence of Jesus. Was he a created being, or is he the God in flesh? As John chapter 1, verse 14, John 8:58, John 10:30, and Colossians 1:15 all purport. And so the idea that this version or something was created of Christianity is simply historically inaccurate. In fact, you had the Edict of Milan in 313, 12 years prior to the Council of Nicaea, legalizing Christianity because it was already in existence and it was already thriving in Africa. In fact, Africa actually evangelized Europe. And so it's important that we get our history straight and make sure we're not getting into anachronisms as it relates to what actually happened historically. Secondly, the idea that it is a white man's religion is why I wrote my book, because we must distinguish whitewashing, which I would actually agree with my brother Melick when he talked about the culture. Whitewashing is the process of white scholars and theologians emphasizing Eurocentrism at the exclusion of the African history and African nature of Christianity. There were African Jews. Africans have written books in the Bible. I'm sure we can get into that a little later. So as we're having this discussion, it's just important that we distinguish whitewashing, which again centers white people, and it whitewashes the Bible, making Jesus white, Moses white, Abraham white. These were Middle Eastern people. These were not white people. And so I think it's important that we know that, because it's playing into the hands of white supremacy to actually give them credit for a religion that we actually shaped and were a part of long before the transatlantic slave trade.
If I could speak to that real quick, thank you for
I'd
your
like to say something to that too.
thank you for your words, Brother Jerome. You're right about the Conference of Nicaea, but Conference of Nicaea is where Jesus was created, not Christ. And the religion of Christianity, which comes from the Coptics of Ethiopia for the first 300 years, but even before that, it was a sect of Egypt. Those from Ptolemy, who was a Greek, who wanted to be a deified god in Egypt, the first person to want to be a pharaonic god in Egypt. They created this symbol, this mythology based upon him, and created this symbol known as Serapis. And I'm sure you know that as well. I said, but it all comes out of Egypt in the first place. All of the tenets, all of the elements of Christianity, all of it comes out of Kemet. Kemet, for everyone, is the name Egypt.
There's the name of Egypt.
The Greek name, Kemet, is the African name. And so all of the elements that went into the making of Christianity come out of Kemet, come out of Africa. And so when we begin this talk, we have to be honest with the history, because our history goes so much longer. It's not 2,000 years old. And so that's where you're going to get hung up in a lot of your facts when you.
Can I respond to that, since we're talking facts? So again, I mentioned the Edict of Milan, which happened 12 years prior to the Council of Nicaea. So you just said that Jesus was created at the Council of Nicaea. The Edict of Milan was declaring Christianity already before that. You can even go to 303, the Edict of Diocletian, where they were attacking Christian and the image of Christ before the Council of Nicaea. So what you're doing right now, brother, is what's called an anachronism, which is a timeline error, because I'm giving you dates. So this is not, we're not even talking scripture. We're talking about what happened. Hold on, we're talking about what happened. You said that Jesus was created at Nicaea. And I'm telling you he existed before then. Obviously, they were discussing the essence of Jesus. Was he a created being or not? Hence the Nicene Creed. And I'm quoting the actual Nicene Creed. In the Nicene Creed, it says begotten and not made. That's what came out of the Council of Nicaea. For you to say that he was created there, when the actual creed from the actual event makes it clear that he was begotten and not made, again, is just historically inaccurate. It's factually inaccurate, and it doesn't even actually purport what happened at the Council of Nicaea.
I would like to address some of that. So see, the problem with these type of conversations is what's happening now is that we began to discuss what I would call the peripheral aspects of historical thoughts and dates and how they impact what happened then. But it doesn't really address the effects that's happening now. All right? For example, every group of people are entitled to their mythology. Every group of people. Mythology is simply the legends, stories, fables that explain phenomena relative to the culture that of the culture that observes the phenomena. Rain, the moon rising, the sun setting. That culture has a mythology associated with it. Now, the problem is that when one culture's mythology becomes history to another culture. Now, when you look up and you find that African people in the diaspora or the worldwide, Brother Jerome, Brother Damon, when you look up and you find African people who have the mythology that they are holding true as history, then now you have a problem, especially when they are ignorant of their own mythology. And so that's what's being expressed today in Christianity. For example, how would you know if your religion is influenced by the culture of your conquerors? Well, the answer to that is this, is if that if your expression of your relationship to God is actually a cultural idea that predates the very religion that you espouse, then you're worshiping someone else's culture. For example, today is Monday. In your Christian books, in your Christian ideology, you call it Monday, but it's Moon Day. If we go to Thursday, it's Thor's Day. You have no knowledge, regardless of those African names at the Council of Nice, you have no knowledge of the fourth or the fifth day of the week being in any other culture except Greek or Rome. And I can pause if you guys can name what the fourth, fifth, or sixth day is in any cultural expression beyond Greek and Roman.
So let me.
The reason you can't answer it.
Well, no, he was.
You can't answer it. I know you can't. And you would just say something else. But what I'm saying is the reason you can't do that is because you can only espouse Greco-Roman culture. And I agree with you, Brother Jerome, you understand the whitewashing of it. Brother Jared, my pushback to you with my brother, first of all, I'm not a Pan-Africanist, by the way. But my pushback around this subject is that what we understand historically and today was not created by African people. It was not created by African people. Christianity is a syncretic religion, meaning that it is, as it moved through the world, it picked up those aspects of the cultures around it and dominated them in an effort to convert them. And so our people hid our culture inside of it so that we could continue worshiping our deities. And over time, when the elders passed, that which was behind Christianity faded away, and that which was in front of it, Mary eating an apple, a snake in the tree, and so on, all of those things stayed prominent in our belief system. And that's why I want to pause in this frame by saying that you will know if you are worshiping or deifying Greek European culture if you have no knowledge of any African cultural reference of their relationship to the Creator.
So I want to interject.
And that question is still on the table to name a day of the week outside of your Christian.
Go ahead, Damon.
Yeah, so I want to interject because you made an argument about mythology and every culture being entitled to their own mythology as long as it doesn't dominate another people group.
No, I said as long as it does not become the history.
As long as it doesn't.
The mythology of the Bible has become world history for everyone who's submitted.
Got you. And I stand corrected. That's exactly what you said. So I want to build from there because the premise of that argument is still flawed because it's built on the premise that Christianity is mythology, which is what Jared was arguing. And the reality is that all of these kinds of claims that you guys are making is what you would call historical revisionism. For instance, this idea that Jesus was created at the Council of Nicaea. We literally have 300 years of surviving documentation by early Christian communities talking about their beliefs in Jesus, which correspond and align to exactly what is taught in the New Testament. And so we don't have a mythology there. We do have a belief system, and that belief system is predicated on the actual historical evidence for Jesus's life. Now, if you recall,
Thursday is still Thor's Day.
Hang on.
Okay.
I think that's irrelevant to
the mythology is still present today. Just saying that.
All right, yeah, but I think that's irrelevant to this part of the conversation. What we want to correct is this idea that Christianity is mythology. And what's further interesting is what Jared is arguing, and even what you're arguing. This idea of mythology. All of those things were put forth by white pseudo intellectuals. Those ideas are not African. So, for instance, Jared was talking about this, and you were talking about this notion of Christianity essentially borrowing or stealing African ideas. That idea was first put forth by Gerald Massey, who had no degrees in Egyptology at all. And in his books, The Beginning and Ancient Egypt, Light of the World, he put forth these ideas that essentially Christianity borrowed its idea of Jesus from Egypt and even started creating these false parallels between Jesus and Horus. The same ideas that
Damon,
all
can I ask you a
modern
question?
zeitgeist. Hang on.
Hold on, wait, Malik, hold on 1 second. Let him finish his thought.
Okay.
The same ideas that all of your modern zeitgeist, all of your Jesus mythicism that's put forth by white scholars are built on. And so the fact of the matter is that these ideas that so-called the conscious community and Pan-Africanist thinkers put forth were all borrowed by essentially theosophists, esoteric white Europeans from the late 19th century that created the idea that eventually evolved into Africana studies. And none of these ideas are actually rooted in factual history. None of these ideas are actually rooted in documented evidence in the literature. They are theories and hypotheses that are largely based on things such as this idea of the Black Athena. And that is the idea that that Greece essentially stole from Africa its ideas about religion, spirituality, and even from Egyptian libraries. All of those ideas are false. And this is the same seedbed and foundation for which these ideas about Christianity being the white man's religion are all built on. I would challenge every last one of you to actually substantiate the claims that you are making based on actual history, not just historical claims. And when you start looking at, for instance, the Council of Nicaea and early Christian communities, the evidence is there that Christians worshiped Christ according to scripture and not according to borrowed tradition. So show me the borrowed tradition. Where did they get it from? Because I can show you that those ideas about, for instance, Jesus being a copy of Horus or Jesus being a copy of some other deity is actually Kessler's idea from the world's 13 crucified saviors, where he essentially created, sensationalized these comparisons and similarities that are not actually rooted in Egyptian mythology. And so the task today is that if Christianity is in fact a white man's religion, let me ask this question. What is it that Black people believe as it relates to Christianity that is borrowed from white Europeans, right? What I'd like for you to do is distinguish and separate, as my brother Jerome did, whitewashing effects in culture from the actual orthodox beliefs that we hold. So what I want to hear is, what is it that we believe that was constructed and essentially given to us by whites that you would call Christianity?
I think that's a good question. But I'd like to go back to a few things that you said. First off, that I want you just to imagine in the course of what you explained. I think that's a great question. But I want you to consider what did African people know being the first people on the planet? Can we all agree that African people were the first people on the planet? Can we agree on that? Are we agreed? Damon, Jerome?
I don't know that to be true. It is largely
you were citing all kind of historical and scientific places.
It is largely that civilization began in Africa.
That is largely accepted in all scholastic circles. Okay, so Jerome, are you there too? I just want to.
That is widely accepted. That is widely accepted. We can agree there.
Oh, wow.
So you don't agree with that? Well, then I think therein lies the problem. That's what I'm calling the cult of black inferiority. But I'll continue. So what I'm saying,
but you're assuming like we're saying that they're white or that it's Europe. I'm just saying like
I didn't say anything about white. I just said black.
No, I'm saying that the reason I'm saying I agree that it's widely accepted, but like as we're talking dates and stuff, and none of you have given sources.
Okay, I'll get there.
No sources to substantiate your claim. So it's primarily esoteric knowledge you guys are communicating, not anything cited so far.
It's fine. Because what it's cited, it's recorded that slaves obey your masters, but that doesn't mean that it has true context to be accepted as a philosophy, okay? What I'm saying is this.
We can break that down.
I was asking, but you answered because the way you answered. It is accepted and understood and established, perhaps beyond what you've cited, that African people were the first people on the planet. Now, I want you just to consider this. What you call esoteric information or knowledge is common sense in the other world, in other worlds. The first people on the planet are the firstborn people on the planet. Clearly, the first people on the planet know who made them. But aren't you even suspect, academic, scholarly individuals, and then the listening audience, aren't you suspect that the most popular account of the creator and the creation does not come from the first people, the second people, third people, for it comes later on in the world, and that ideology, that idea of who and what created everyone and everything is popularized by perhaps the last group of people on the planet. And only
so
because
you asserting the Jews are white? I'm trying to get, because yeah. So what are you asserting here to say that the last group? Clear. So who's the last group? Who's the last group?
Well, the last group of people would be the youngest group of people on the planet, and that would be the European group of people.
Right. And so again, you're asserting that the people who wrote the scriptures are white people because you're saying that we're getting it, that they're the most popular. Is that your assertion?
What I'm asserting is that the people who have popularized, basically the idea of Christianity as you know it comes out of Rome.
No, it doesn't.
Not true. Not true.
And see
not
again,
true.
There's
as you know it, my brother.
That's
what I'm saying.
Not true.
One second.
Not even as we.
Let's slow it down right here.
So let's give Jerome and Damon the opportunity to address this, because I think that's a really great question.
Yes.
Where does Christianity come from?
They're not even stating that black people were the first people on the planet, and that's just crazy.
Wait, hold tight, Jerry, because that's a different that's a different conversation.
Hold on, Damon. But before you go into it, Damon, I'm gonna preface this because this was said prior, and I think this is an important part. When Gerard was driving his point home about Christianity, he was speaking and then he made a statement, though it came from us, as in Christianity got it and it was sourced from somewhere else. We're also hearing now that Christianity here has this Roman influence in the writing. And let's get to the source of it. Let's answer that question. Where does it really come from?
And it wouldn't be called Christianity in its original form. You have the first group of people have a relationship with divinity, the creation and the creator. And as these people are encountered and move through history, this is what happens in social sciences and anthropology throughout the world. It's called fusion. People influence other cultures. If we were to, the brothers here, I know that they're astute upon this, because when the brother asked me, am I saying that Jews are white? The first people, as you espouse, the people who wrote the Bible, or the first books of the Bible, were not even Jewish.
So Abraham
was not
Jewish. Hold tight, Mallet. We're gonna have Damon get in this. 2,000 people in the chat.
Right quick, because you asserted something about our book. So I just want to correct you, because you're talking about Abraham, and it is considered an Abrahamic faith. But when we see about within the text is in Exodus chapter 17, where God tells Moses to write. That's why we credit Moses with the writing of the Pentateuch, or the first 5 books of the Bible. And Moses was not a white man. So
What
when
language is
you,
Pentateuch?
but no,
Hold
yeah,
on, wait,
hold on,
Malik,
brother.
you got to hold tight,
I'm
Malik.
saying you're making comments about our book now. So I know you might discredit it and you don't believe it, but if you're going to make comments about it, you got to at least get it right and get it in context. So and again, that's my book. So I'm going to know my book because I'm hinging eternity on what it says and it declares about God. So the first time we see something about writing it is in Exodus chapter 17, where the Most High, Yahweh, tells Moses, or Moshe in Hebrew, to write. So so when you talk about Abraham was credited with the faith because of Genesis 15:6. His faith was accounted as righteousness. But when you see the writing of the text, we see that in the book of Exodus, where God tells Moses to write.
So, and I want to build on that as well. So, one of the problems with your argument, Melik, is it's what you would call the fallacy of antiquity. Your argument is essentially based on this idea that if things are earlier, they must be truer, and that's simply not true, right? So, here's how your argument works. Well, the first people had an idea about God, therefore, the first people's idea about God must be right. And the reality is that that's no more true than the argument from our contemporary period. That is the idea that arguments later are more informed. The reality is that we can look at history and see that people from every period have had wrong-headed views about God and spirituality. And so your argument is fallacious just on that point alone. The other point is when you're talking about the Bible and where it comes from and where Christians got their idea of God from, that's also predicated on this false idea that it is all borrowed. And so you seem to think, and many of your ilk seem to think, that Christianity and the faith as taught in Scripture is eclectic, that it literally is borrowed, ultimately going all the way back to African cultures and African spirituality, and it was essentially that there were some Christian names and Christian ideas superimposed over those African beliefs, and so that kind of predication is also false. I would push back and challenge you to not simply make claims, but to prove where these ideas were borrowed from. How you know, from an epistemological standpoint, how do you know that to be true? All I'm hearing from you are a lot of claims, and false claims at that, but nothing that's actually supported or substantiated historically by literary record. And so, so the ideas that you have about Christianity are essentially a straw man. So when you go to knock Christianity down, you're really not knocking Christianity down. You're knocking a version of Christianity down that you have erected in your mind that's actually predicated on wrong ideas and false ideas about Christianity. I have yet to hear you say anything other than basic claims that we hear all the time in barbershops, but nothing that's actually rooted in history or historical evidence. So I am waiting on that so that I can rebuttal that.
Now,
let's pause it real quick,
yeah,
guys.
I want to pause it real quick because Damon, I actually want your perspective on where Christianity originated.
And we got the poll. We got to close out,
we got
right?
the poll. So really quick, guys, does Christianity liberate or oppress Black people? So far, we got over 1,000 votes. So continue to cast in your votes. I'm getting ready to close that just shortly once we end this first part of the conversation. And we got 2,100 people in the chat hearing these brothers drop boatloads of insight and perspective, and the conversation is moving so fast, guys. So let me know if you keeping up in the chat. Just type "keep up" in the chat because it's a lot going on.
This is
right
very important, guys. Very important conversation that we have in here because these are questions that even a lot of us Christians may not know how to answer. And if you approach with some questions that you may not know how to answer, and you call yourself a Christian, you might be able to get debated right about your faith. So it's very important to make sure you're studying, not just obviously the good book itself, but also being able to historically understand the faith, which I think is the next question Ryan is asking.
Yeah, maybe because before we move on to the next subgroup of questions, I want Damon to get the opportunity to address this. Yeah. Damon, where does Christianity originate from?
Yeah, so from a geographical standpoint, Christianity has its genesis on the continent of Asia, and quickly spread within the first year of its genesis into Africa, not only North Africa, but also into East Africa as well, and also begin to spread into areas such as Persia, and then ultimately begin to spread into areas such as Europe. So the idea that Christianity is a white man's religion is historically false. Christianity is a global faith historically held by people from various ethnic groups, various cultures from all over the world. But if Christianity has its genesis in Asia, the history shows us that the cradle of Christianity is in Africa. And one of the things that I'd like to also mention about this is that when these guys talk and those like them make these kinds of claims, what they're actually doing is insulting the intelligence of ancient African brothers and sisters who placed their faith in Christ, having lived in Africa, many of them in Egypt, many in Ethiopia, many in the region that we would call the Sudan, that was aware and familiar with African spirituality, those gods, those beliefs, and those practices, and yet still turned to Christ, not because of European missiology, not because of European influence, but because of the influence of Africans who came to faith in Christ and began to spread that. And so they are insulting the intelligence of those persons who compared their current worldview of spirituality to what they had heard in the gospel and found Christianity to not only be an intelligent faith, but that it was also reasonable, that it was evidential, and from an experiential standpoint, it was transformative. One of the foremost Kenyan theologians and scholars, Dr. John Mbidi, said that Christianity is so old in Africa that it can rightly be considered indigenous African religion. And so the interesting thing is, 319 AD, the very first country in the world to declare itself Christian was actually ancient Ethiopia. Literally, ancient Ethiopia was the first country to consider itself to be Christian. With a black Christian king. And wow. So when we look at history, we have black theologians from Africa. We've got black Christians from Africa dying for their faith, having come to faith in Christ against the backdrop of a spirituality that they were more familiar with than any of these persons or any other person claiming to be a Kemeticist, and yet still chose Christ over and above. And yet, choosing Christ, they did not deny their own culture. That is the wonderful thing about the beautiful mosaic of Christianity, is that you can trust in Christ and incorporate the practices of your culture in the practice of Christianity in every place except those places that it does not align with the biblical worldview that Christianity espouses. And millions upon millions upon millions of Africans from the 1st century AD all the way up until the very current period that we are living in have done that intelligently, including, ironically, Marcus Garvey. I mean, the very poster child of Pan-Africanism. Maybe these gentlemen are unfamiliar with the fact that if Marcus Garvey were on this panel, he would be on our side because he actually was a born-again Christian holding to, here's what he says, I believe in God the Father, God the Son, and God the Holy Spirit. I endorse the Nicene Creed. I believe that Jesus died for me. I believe that God lives for me as for all men, and no condition that you can impose upon me by deceiving me about Christianity will cause me to doubt Jesus Christ and to doubt God. I shall never hold Christ responsible for the commercialization of Christianity by the heartless men who adopt it as the easiest means of fooling and robbing other people out of their land and country. Last thing I'll say real quick is this, is that Marcus Garvey and many of our African ancestors who became enslaved here in the Americas, and even those who practiced Christianity before the transatlantic slave trade, we insult their intelligence when we don't recognize the fact that they were able to distinguish and dichotomize the mispractice and the co-opting of Christianity by evil whites who were actually misrepresenting Christ from the true biblical practice and beliefs of Christianity. That's what they held to. And they were able to articulate the distinction between true historic biblical Christianity and the kind that was misrepresented by whites claiming to be Christians, who our ancestors believed that those men did not know God. They did not believe that they were worshiping the gods of those evil men. So we insult the intelligence of people like Marcus Garvey and millions of enslaved Africans that practice Christianity here in the context of slavery and on the other side prior to the transatlantic slave trade.
So
can I add one more quote?
Hold on, we gotta let the first of all, we just gotta let the mic cool off right now.
Yeah, let me say, you got some people ready to jump through their computers right now after they heard David.
It's a bunch of
didn't ring the bell. You didn't ring the bell. You let it go pretty long on that.
I was letting my brother cook. I had to let my brother cook on that one.
You were letting him cook, but
no. I want to answer this. This is really important here. The reason, by the way, I really wanted to get the source of where Christianity started with, so it was a bit of a history lesson tied into that. Malik, I'm gonna get to you, Malik. Go ahead and close us out, Jerome here, and Malik, you up next. And then, guys, we gotta move to the next.
Let me give and then Gerard, I'll read the quote. Our brother Gerard hasn't, so I do want to be respectful.
No, I want after you, Jerome, bro.
Yeah, so I'm gonna read this quote too that answers the question of, is it good for black people? And this is Garvey again. He said this.
Wow.
He said, it has been a historic attitude of man to keep his brother in slavery in subjection for the purpose of exploitation. When Jesus came, the privileged few were taking advantage of the unfortunate masses, because the teaching of Jesus sought to equalize the spiritual and even the temporal rights of man. Those who held authority, sway, and dominion sought his liberty by persecution, sought his life by death. He was called to yield up that life for the cause he loved, because he was indeed a true reformer. Marcus Garvey, and the source is the Selected Writings and Speeches of Marcus Garvey, 2015. Because again, I think it's important that we give the people sources. So even though we're Christians, we're not going to give faith-based answers to fact-based questions. So we're giving sources so people can go back. And this is a primary source because this is Marcus Garvey directly, who sees Christ and Christianity as liberating, and he was able to distinguish the white supremacist version of Christianity, which was not Christianity at all, and true authentic Christianity. And this is a direct quote from Marcus Garvey.
There you have it. Thank you very much, brother. Go ahead, Gerard.
Yeah, what I want to say is...
Jared. I'm sorry, Jared.
It's fine.
Go ahead.
Thank you for that too, Jerome. One of the things that I think, I think we need to be genuine in what is being said. A lot of times in arguments, people attempt to just argue for the sake of arguing or want to one-up someone. When I dealt with Jesus and Christ, what I'm saying is Christ was there, but not Jesus himself. That's 325. That's just fact. You can go back to your conference.
So what's your source? What's your source?
Conference of Nicaea itself, the documents of the Conference of Nicaea.
Okay, also, so I got a source.
I do too.
That addresses. So I would love to see it. I would love to see it. And again, I told you.
Wait. Let's Jerome. Let's let my brother finish it. Go ahead, Jared.
Sorry, you're right. I apologize, Jared. I'm sorry.
Damon also, you're talking about source. Damon didn't name a source as it pertained to where about Asia being some type of original source of Christianity. And so when we see Christianity, we have all kind of authors, John G. Jackson, George G.M. James. You've already named some of them yourselves with it. But what you're doing in this conversation is you're having the conversation, you're prepared in a manner and a way just to say you're going to just discredit people like Sheikh Anta Diop and all of the erudition and work that he did on showing the falsifications of history by the European, by Western civilization, but you're not dealing with the African origins of civilization, African origins of religion, like John G. Jackson did in multiple versions of his text. So we can quote many of the texts that have been produced by our great scholars that has not been properly contended against. So when we talk about African origins of civilization, it just makes sense that it's also African origins of religion too. African people migrated out of Africa and began civilizing the planet. What they took with them are the social constructs, the cultural constructs, the political constructs in order to create those civilizations. When they created the first Chinese civilizations, which was there. So you're talking about Asia. When you talk about India, it's African people, the Indus Valley. So all of it is African people. Over time, you begin to see changes occur, of course. So as he talked about the 13
crucified saviors.
Crucified saviors. You also have the world's 16 crucified saviors by
Kessler.
Graves. We have plenty of evidence to show the Immaculate Conception was done many times over, starting with Heru. And so when we also look at the text of the Bible, it's also an astrology book. So I can look at it as an astrology book as well. But when I look at and I've been to the Louvre in Paris, and I saw the Zodiac of Dendera. In order to construct the Zodiac of Dendera, your civilization would have had to be around for a minimum of 25,000 years. And so that spiritual culture was here. And you're talking about artifacts and evidence. That's one body of evidence right then and there that lets you know for that observation to occur, for you to do that level of documentation, to know how we've gone through every zodiac over 25,000 years, 2,144 years to go through each sign. Those are facts as well. You can debate me on the actual number as well. But what you find is, in order to construct that zodiac, it took that long. This is a spiritual culture that created this. But even to have the idea to do it, wouldn't it have taken another 25,000 years just to do it? So I'm saying African culture and civilization has been here and is still here. Now, while Egypt is dead, is not a living spiritual or culture anymore, you still see it throughout Africa. So when you see the oneness of God, which we had the oneness of the Creator, we had this idea of creation in its oneness. We also see it in Ifa amongst the Yoruba. We see the attributes of creation and how the Neter and the Orisha are very similar. So we see many of the things. We saw it also contained in slavery when we were able to take Christianity and put it and marry it and fuse it, as Melik was talking about earlier, into Voodoo in order to survive slavery. Because why? Because the religion itself comes out of Africa in the first place. Brother Jerome, Brother Damon, I'm sorry, you're correct about the first 300 years. It was in Ethiopia. It was the Coptic religion, yes. And there's an Ethiopian Bible where Jesus is not from Bethlehem. Jesus is where they talk about Christ coming from being born in a cave, a little black baby born in a cave. So when we talk about all of these things, there's another history, especially it's a long history when we deal with African people. The culture has been here for a long time, and you still see it in Africa. You don't see it in Asia like you do in Africa. It's not the same. So African people are here. Our spirituality is here. When Islam came, Islam facilitated Arab imperialism. Christianity brought about European imperialism at 325. After 325, that's when you see a significant difference. That's when you see a significant bastardization. And especially by the time of globalization, after the 1400s, when the European began the slave trade and then began to force and torture us into oblivion with trying to digest this particular religion. And so it wasn't religion that we were into, it was spirituality. And the elements that went into the making of Christianity, the elements that went into the making of Islam come out of Africa, and the history is there. You can go to, I'll say this last thing. I know I heard that bell, brother. You can go to our brothers of who I said earlier, Sheikh Anta Diop, and go to UNESCO. You see all of the artifacts that had to be saved as a result of the European and the Arab destroying African artifacts that have been long-standing way before your religion began.
You know what's interesting, Gerard, about
and all you do,
can I respond?
Damon or Jerome, I see both of y'all shaking your heads over there. So what we can do is we can go to. Yeah, hold tight, man. Hold tight. So look, this is what we're gonna do. We're gonna hit Jerome real quick. We're gonna and let's close out, Jerome. Let's get your final points in. We can go to Malik, and then we'll have Damon close out.
Yeah, and guys, we haven't even got to the second topic of the show here. Believe it or not, this is all the very first. So go ahead.
Again,
let's be brief and brilliant.
He talked about two things. He talked about artifacts and things like that, and so. Scripture the Bible is a historical book. I mean, it mentions Israel, Egypt, Babylon, but then we have archaeological elements as Cyrus's cylinder, which was discovered in 1879. You got the Dead Sea Scrolls that had almost all of the books of the Bible discovered in 1947. The Pool of Siloam discovered in 2004. Evidence of Egypt's invasion of Lachish were discovered. The Assyrian siege of Lachish, as well as, so you have those things. You have over 5,800 manuscripts of scripture. The second publication, even close, is Homer's Iliad with only 2,000. So when you want to talk about historical evidence, there's tons of historical and archaeological evidence and geographical evidence that purports what the scriptures declare. Now you mentioned George James, and you didn't say the book, but for those listening, he's most likely talking about the book Stolen Legacy. And the problem with that book, Stolen Legacy, is he claimed, among other things, that Aristotle stole his ideas from the Library of Alexandria when he arrived with Alexander the Great. That's what he says in the book. The problem with that is he must have been unaware that Alexandria was built under Alexander's orders, and it bears the name from his library. And then some of the ideas, his ideas, the timeline was off after he would have reportedly already been dead, so he wouldn't have been able to steal those ideas from the grave. That's the problem when you actually dig. So us as Christians, I don't only read my Bible. I read the Quran, and I read James's book. And then even if you go to Walter Williams and the historical origin of Christianity, he had to write another edition because he had so many inaccuracies, and he did not have any footnotes. So in 2011, the 8th printing, they had to apologize because, again, it was just esoteric knowledge, which is faith, basically saying, take my word for it about these claims about Christianity that were not historically proven or cited or backed. And so I mentioned too, Walter Williams, George James, and then gave you some historical evidence. I just think it's important for those that are listening that they hear Christians giving you history, giving you facts, giving you archaeology, and then giving you sources, because my brothers still haven't given any books. So here's another one, How Africa Shaped the Christian Mind by Thomas Oden. And so these are sources. When you go in the back, people, you want to see footnotes, because if you don't see footnotes in the back, they're basically telling you, take my word for it. And if God is real, which we believe he is, you don't want to make an eternal decision based on somebody just telling you, take my word for it. Even if it's not Christian faith, that is a form of faith. And so we are well read on this stuff because we want to know what we believe and why. And because Christianities are making that there's one way, there's one God, and there's one book for 8 billion people, we better be able to defend it. So I'm all fine with the disagreements and the pushback. But what I'm still lacking from both of these brothers is accurate sourcing.
Thank you for that, Jerome. We're going to go over here. I'm going to get to Malik now. Go ahead, Malik.
So let me speak to what's been said, from the other side, right? The problem with these conversations is this, that you've rehearsed a way to respond.
That's right.
To defend Christianity, but you're not addressing, like Jared said, let's be honest instead of being academic. See, what you think you're hearing is a group of men who can't cite this and that. You don't understand what world conquest looks like. World conquest looks like libraries of documentation that prove the lopsided power dynamics in the world today are not lopsided, that Europeans deserve to be the next thing to divinity. So all of what you cite, that's your way of you holding firm. But the reality is this: what version of Christianity are you using can be used that's liberating our people from the bondage that we've been in for the last 500 to 1,000 years? You can cite who you need to cite. The reality is the diabetes, the death rate, the famine, everything that we are on the bottom. I don't know where all you've traveled. It's not a traveling contest, a passport contest either. But everywhere you will go or have gone where Black people are, we're at the bottom. And you know what we believe in those places? Christianity. So the real question that the souls of African people are asking, they're asking, how can we use this book as a tool of liberation? And you know what? Y'all got an answer right now, but y'all have an answer that has not answered that situation. You can cite whatever. As my brother say, it's an insult. I love Marcus Garvey, but I can understand when Marcus Garvey is incorrect. We love our brother Malcolm. And when our brother Malcolm went to the quote unquote Middle East and saw Europeans there kneeling, he didn't have the knowledge of the Crusader Wars and the transplanting of African people in those lands. So he thought, hey, Islam is that the bell?
No, you good.
You just paranoid, Malik. Just paranoid.
I'm like, what? What is this?
No, go ahead.
He's getting ready to go off.
What I'm saying is, brotherhood, is that let's move to the soul of what's taking place.
Right.
Let's move to the soul, because people are looking for real answers. None of us should be approaching this conversation. When you mention that Christianity started in Asia, Christ, you ignore the linguistics of Asian people would not have called him Christ. You see, so if we're gonna, I wasn't trying to.
We can break down the letter J.
I know that you can. I know that you can break it down, but you can't show me how this has liberated us.
I recently went to Navrongo.
No.
I went to Navrongo, and the dominant religion was Islam, and the poverty was high.
But all Abrahamic religions, all of them come from the same source. They have been used. It's okay. They have been used historically, and the evidence is still in our present day reality. In our present day reality, everywhere African people are, we have never been liberated, calling on the gods of our conquerors. And that's a reality. So the question I would have you all, demonstrably, show me a Christian nation and their relationship to African people that you can cite that. A Christian nation that exists today, and then tell me what their relationship is to African people and African suffering. And I'll pause again.
So
now, Jerome and Damon, because it's just, man, this conversation.
It's so much, because here's the thing, because what's happening is we prepare questions for you guys to advance through some things, but y'all prepare questions for each other. So what's happening is y'all taking it somewhere. Yeah. And
it's
Malik, by the way, Malik, that was a great question. I hate to say I want to skip over that, but we're an hour in, and I really want to get to this next portion that I think is going to be really important for us to cover.
Hey, Malik, that wasn't on us. That wasn't on us.
Can we let Damon?
Oh no, he helped you out with the bail. You know, that's
I don't need the help.
concept of being saved by the bail.
We can answer that
Damon over there
question.
thinking, what book can I start?
It's not even a book because most of the time the Pan-Africans don't offer anything either. When you look at our history, it was
No, you didn't. The question hasn't been asked to me.
Well, again, Black Christians have been a part of the empowerment of Black people, not Black atheists, and then Pan-Africanism. You got to look at Alexander Crummell.
I'm not a Pan-African.
Hold on, wait.
Well, I know, but
no, we talking.
Again, we were told you were. We
hold on, wait,
out
Jerome.
You know.
Hold on, wait, Jerome. Hold on, wait. Just quick, because I don't even want you to rush the answer to that, because that's not even gonna really give us what we need. Let's go ahead and table that. I'm writing that down. If we got time to get back to it, we will. I doubt we will, because we got another incredible topic that I want us to cover moving next. But first, for everybody just coming in, into the conversation, right now, we literally have a whole out apology session going on right here, an apologetic session going on right here on Harley Initiated.
And it looks like we got some apologetic celebrities in the chat, because I just keep seeing their name. I see the BK Apologist and True ID Apologetic. So guys, if you guys are in the chat, we're gonna later at the end of the show, we are going to drop the link to the platforms. You guys can come up and join us. And if you really in the chat right now watching, go ahead and send that super chat so we can make sure that you in here with us this evening.
No, absolutely, guys, absolutely. Is Christianity the white man's religion? This is what we're trying to discuss here. We got a great conversation still prepared. Yep. I got 4 intelligent brothers here that we're going to carry this out and get as close as we can to the truth here tonight.
Absolutely. Let me close this poll out. Does Christianity liberate or oppress Black people? We got over 1,700 people that have chimed in on this. We got 70% at liberate, and the remaining 30% is either oppress or undecided. So this 30%, guys, this is who this conversation is absolutely for. And I see some people in the chat upset about this, but guys, we like to bring people of opposing views onto the platform, because it does help us to learn about the opposite perspective, and it gives the opportunity for our Christian brothers, come bringing all this knowledge to shine.
And 100%, and the reality of it is, a lot of us, a lot of our people in the community have those exact same thoughts and ideas.
Right.
So we got to bring these thoughts and ideas together. We want to pressure test them, and we want to see and find the truth. So with that being the case here, we actually got to add that we got to get to. Let's go ahead and hit our episode sponsor here before we move to the next topic.
Absolutely. 2,500 people in the chat right now. And shout out to our episode sponsor, Natura Herbs, who's really helping us putting on an amazing platform and helping us get these wonderful brothers we got on tonight. So listen up, initiates. If you are ready to take charge of your health and truly heal from within, you need to check out Natura Herbs. Now, Garland and Devaney, who actually sent us out a care package, we got to get that thing popping. We're probably going to bring it here on Wednesday.
Oh, yeah.
Send us a bunch of tea. But these are the founders of Natura Herbs and also a beautiful Black couple. So if you go to the About Delano, you can pull a couple up. But they started their healing journey themselves and for their loved ones naturally, and they help their loved ones and themselves from hormonal imbalances, digestive issues, anxiety, and more. Their herbal products are crafted with the most quality herbs and plants, and to help you transform your life just the way nature intended. So guys, do not wait. Visit naturaherbs.health and start your healing journey today. Trust us, it is the truth. And I love my loose leaf tea, but that's we can talk about that all night. But guys, again, that's naturaherbs.health, and go ahead and use the promo code Hardly Initiated for 10% off your entire order.
You're welcome, family.
You're welcome forever.
You're welcome.
And again, that's naturaherbs.com, the naturaherbs.health. Hardly Initiated for 10% off. The link is in the description, and I will also drop it in the chat.
Great job, Ryan. Thank you so much for that, family. Y'all now have the plug to the best and brightest herbs in the game. And now I want to go ahead and move over. Listen, Rolando, we're going to have to skip some topics here because the brothers here ran a little bit of overtime on that last one. So we actually going to go to topic 3 here, because this one here is very important, all right? So, should the racial identity of Jesus matter? Okay, and we started with my opposing my brothers here who I wanted to say Pan-Africanist, but at this point, Malik has pretty much debunked my whole. I can't even.
He said he's not
it.
rocking with Malcolm X, the Garveyites, or Pan-Africanists.
Can I say how do I describe? Give me a word to describe the belief system. Let me properly capture that, Malik. What's the word for it? Is it? Can I just say? Was it pro African history? Pro? What is it?
I relate to what my cultural history is. I'm an African person. That's it.
Okay, fair enough. So what I want to do here, I'm gonna let you go ahead and pop this off. Damon, can you start here with us? Does should the racial identity of Jesus matter?
Yeah, I would say yes and no, and for two different reasons. Yes, it should matter where the racial identity of Jesus is being used as a tool of oppression, where it's being used to oppress the socio-psychological well-being of African people, where it's being used as a tool to suggest that white people are supreme, or white supremacy, where it is being used to put forth the idea that Christianity is the white man's religion. So for those reasons, it is extremely important that we understand that all of the European depictions of Jesus, essentially as a blonde hair, blue-eyed white man, are historically, geographically incorrect. That nobody that biblically practices Christianity actually believes that Jesus looked that way, although those kind of whitewashing images were put forth. The reality is that we know why they were put forth, because they were being used as tools for white supremacy, white superiority, and black oppression. So for those kinds of reasons, and obviously for the sake of history, it is important to ascertain the truth that Jesus was not, in fact, a white man. Now, from a spiritual theological standpoint, it actually doesn't matter at all. What does matter is that that is God the Son, from eternity, incarnated, literally and fleshed, became part of humanity, took on humanity, and actually lived a perfectly sinless life in obedience to God the Father, that he might not only live for our righteousness, but also die for our justification. And so the reality is what color he would have been for that purpose and that praxis is absolutely irrelevant. So from a spiritual theological standpoint, it doesn't matter. But when we're looking at history, and when we're looking at the various socio-psychological ways in which white Jesus was used as a tool of oppression, it is extremely important that we not only get that right, but that we correct those false notions that Jesus was pale-faced, blonde-haired, blue eyes, as my brother Jerome Gay likes to say, Pantene V Jesus.
Pantene Pro V Jesus.
Yeah, there you go.
Yeah.
With the silky hair press and and all that good stuff. So no, we don't believe that, and so I would answer that question yes and no.
Jerome, do you have anything to
evidence that he existed?
Say what?
I'm sorry.
Evidence that Jesus even existed.
Say it again.
He said, what is your evidence that Jesus existed?
Evidence that Jesus existed. I know.
Oh,
great question, Jerome. Can you address that? Can you pull out the footnotes on that?
Yeah, well, we got the writings of Josephus. You're asking for evidence, and we have to go by. We have these documents. We have extra.
I'm making your circular argument that y'all put on us.
It's not a circular argument, but I'm just saying we have extra biblical writings of historical people who actually existed, that talked about Jesus existing. I would just add, in terms of, again, the racial makeup, that 4 of the women in Jesus's earthly lineage mentioned in Matthew 1 are of Hamitic descent: Tamar, Bathsheba, Ruth, and Rahab. These are African women. These are not white women. So when you study the history and the lineage of Jesus, you got 4 people of Hamitic descent. Again, this is why I wrote the book. So here's where we agree. Here's where my one Pan-African and then my other just African brother, where we agree. This is why I wrote the book, distinguishing whitewashing from saying it's a white man's religion. And so I am agreeing that it's been whitewashed. We've been presented and flooded with white imagery. I think that the line of distinction is I could take a hammer and I could beat someone with it, or I can build a house. It doesn't make hammers wrong. What these brothers are coming to the conclusion is because white supremacists took scriptures out of context and misused it to degrade and dehumanize. This is a historical fact that we need to throw Christianity out. I'm saying, no, the Bible even says in 1 John 4 that if you don't love your brother who you can see, you do not love God who you can't see. White supremacists were not saved. They were not Christians. They are not in eternity, because you cannot hate humanity and claim to love God. So I am conceding whitewashing. What I do disagree is the conclusion that because white supremacists took it out of context and misused the text, that we didn't throw it out. In fact, I have a copy of the slave Bible. And guess what they did to Exodus? They got rid of 38 chapters. Why? Why would they get rid of 38 chapters of the original text?
You would have a copy.
Because they got rid of that because if I'm going to, again, since I believe it, I want to know what I believe and why. And I read the Quran. I read outside of my faith as well. My point in saying that is because, again, we talked about liberation. Exodus is a book of liberation. They know that if they allow these slaves to read all 40 chapters, there's no way that you can read that the God of the Bible is for oppression, but rather he is a God who liberates the oppressed. So that's why they did not even want us to read. If you read the slaves, they said, no, master did not want us to have any religion. And that would be a primary source. So to Damon's earlier point, we don't want to degrade our African ancestors as if they were too stupid to distinguish a white supremacist version of the faith versus an authentic one.
I would like to say, I don't know how I'm going to say respectfully, but I don't know how what comes after that, if it retains that. But
Stephen A. Smith me.
Yes, I'm about to do something probably similar to that. Respectfully, you brothers are disingenuous about what it is that you're espousing. You see, for in one hand to say that you concede to the whitewashing of the Bible. And
no, I didn't say that. I didn't say that.
You concede that the Bible, there are portions of it that's been whitewashed.
No, he didn't say that.
No. The only reason I'm interrupting because I want you to quote me right.
Please
clarify.
I'm saying they whitewashed history by trying to present all of them, but now we have the actual history. That's why in my book I have the footnotes and stuff.
The history of what?
Of Christianity and Judaism.
Okay, well, the history of Christianity and Judaism, you say it was whitewashed. Okay, so I still say that you all are disingenuous because of the thing that I mentioned earlier. Like for our brother Damon to say that it matters the race of Jesus, for historical accuracy, and then to say, but it relates to a theological concept. Where else in history, in the concept of truth, can you be accurate and truthful about the history of something, but theologically that accuracy does not matter? See, the reason why, again, I say it's disingenuous is because it would seem to mean that from you all's argument that there is a version of Christianity that Black people somewhere have, and that is liberating them from the conditions that they live in all over this world and have been living in all over this world. Because it's clear that everywhere we are and we're at the bottom, the prevailing religion is Christianity. And also I charge you all with considering yourselves and our ancestors to be inferior. And the way you're thinking is a case of Black inferiority for the simple fact of this. You're not even open to even consider that prior to Christianity, as the brother Damon mentioned, that the first thing I'm saying, because it was first, it was right. What I'm saying is that I'm simply saying that consider that perhaps I have children. My firstborn child, beyond a shadow of a doubt, knows his makers. And he also knows me at a different age than his brothers and sisters as they go down to the youngest. What I'm trying to say in this process is this, is that the account of that creator weakens as we go down to the youngest child. And the fact that you all are not even open to consider the veracity of what the first people saw, you don't even know it. I would venture to say you don't even know it. You don't even know what.
But you don't either, because where is the literary record of the first people?
Where is the record?
Here is the literary record. The original writing.
That's a great question. Let me answer that. You know what's great about that? Because Europeans have proven that in the way that they would denounce and denigrate and inferiorize first world peoples is to compare anthropologically the way that they document history. Let me say it because I see you cooking.
Yeah, but that's an argument from negation. That's not.
Can I finish it? Can I finish what I'm saying, bro? I'm going to answer your question. I promise you I will. What I'm saying is that imagine a people who were so upright that they spoke their words through generations, through proverbs, through song, through dance, through culture, the way they ate, the way they drank, what hand they shook with, what hand they did not shake with, the day they would do a thing and the day they would not do a thing. Culture was embedded in every aspect of it. Upon African people's fall, Europeans had to write their history down, but mostly for the point to supplant all other world's history. You all act like Europeans have not conquered the world. And everywhere they've conquered, it's been a cross. You act like there's a version of Christianity somewhere floating that if these people grasp the integrity of it, they would be better off. Then where is it? Where is that Christianity functioning where that you all are saying that's ameliorating African people's lives, brown people's lives? The Christianity, you can say that there's obviously you're saying there's two versions. There's the one the white supremacists had, and then there's another one that you all are talking about. Show me the power of that Christianity working in the world today.
Can I respond to you? So you're making a number of classical fallacies. The first thing is,
come on now. Answer the question.
I mean, you
haven't answered one question.
I'm answering it. The first is that, again, you're still straw manning the conversation. You asked, how could I say it matters and then doesn't matter at the same time? And I literally explained why it does matter. And I didn't just say for historical accuracy. I said also because of the socio-psychological tool that white Jesus was presented as a tool of oppression.
I'm with you on that. But
went into that. Hold on. I specifically went into that. For that reason, it is important. But I also explained theologically and spiritually why it is not. Jesus's color has no bearing on what he actually accomplished. Hold on. I'm answering it.
Okay.
Humanity has bearing on that. His color does not. That is how, from a spiritual theological standpoint, it doesn't matter. The other thing is that again, you are all you are really doing is attempting to poke holes in Christianity, but you are not. Hold on, listen. Here's what you are not doing. You are not arguing for anything. You are only arguing against. You haven't put forth any worldview.
That's not the question,
my
brother.
Sir, hold on.
Those are not the questions.
Malik, hold on one second, Malik.
You haven't put forth any reason why your worldview would be superior to Christianity morally, ethically, spiritually. The only thing you are arguing is that it is first, therefore it must be right. In effect, what you are really arguing, hold on, because I didn't interrupt you. What you are really arguing for is what's called ethnic triumphalism. You think that because people are African, they must be more spiritual and therefore more morally righteous, then that's what you're really arguing. But the reality is that in the biblical worldview, All humans are sinners, including Africans. So the fact of the matter is that no matter how far you go back in African history, all you're going to find is African sinners who are just as morally corrupt as anybody else in the known world. Now, that doesn't negate their genius. It doesn't negate their contributions to technology and to science. But the fact of the matter is, sir, you are not offering us anything. But let me answer the question in this way, because this whole notion about not only is the skin color or the racial identity of Jesus isn't important to answer, but even the liberation piece still, intersects back into that. Let me just read this list off real quick.
You gonna answer my question?
I'm answering it. You got to listen. I'm answering it. Listen to this. Listen to this. I want you to just listen to this. Phyllis Wheatley, Mary McLeod Bethune, Fannie Lou Hamer, Richard Allen, Harriet Tubman, Sojourner Truth, Athanasius, Augustine, Bishop Alexander of Alexandria, Tertullian, Abba Moses the Black, King Azana and King Sazana of Ethiopia, Shenouti the Great, Daniel Alexander Payne, Rosa Parks, Marian Anderson, Benjamin Banneker, George Washington Carver, Lot Carey, Alexander Crummell, Thomas Dorsey, Frederick Douglass, John Hope Franklin, Henry Highland Garnett, Marcus Mosiah Garvey, James Weldon Johnson, Absalom Jones, Vivia Perpetua, Simon the Niger, Martin Luther King Jr., Paul Robeson, Francis Grimke, Booker T. Washington, Dr. Daniel Hale Williams, George W. Williams, Archbishop Desmond Tutu, Emperor Haile Selassie, Samuel Cornish, Denmark Vesey, Nat Turner, Gabriel Prosser, John Berry Meacham. You want to know what they all had in common? Every last one of them were Christians, and they were all liberators. And so if you want to talk
they did not liberate us.
Yes, sir, they were.
Nat Turner was turned into a belt. Denmark Vesey was killed.
We were
not liberated. You just read off the name of people who used it and did not liberate us.
You're interrupting.
You did not answer my question.
You're interrupting. They were all great Africans. They were all brilliant. They were all Christians. And it was their Christianity that informed their liberation, their Black liberation thinking. And so the reality is that when they were thinking about what is best for the liberation of enslaved African Americans, they did not think about your worldview. They did not think about Islam. They did not think about any other worldview.
They were slaves.
They thought about biblical Christianity.
And bro, that's what being conquered looks like. And so you asked me a question.
I'm glad. Hold on. I am glad that you are saying this. Hold on, sir. I am glad that you are saying this in front of thousands of people. You are considering this august list of people that I named conquered people. Therefore, they were inferior in their thinking, colonizing your thinking. I'm glad that you said that, because you need to present a better list.
I will do it. Let me say this. Because the crowd is clear. Those who are pushing the buttons are clear on your side. Let me just tell you what you just did for me. You just named a bunch of people who we all love and respect. Those are ancestors. And that's great that you did, right? But you mentioned that they were liberators. But the question that I asked was very simple. The fact that they used the Bible as a tool to liberate us, and we are not yet liberated, is the proof of my argument. And that's why I say, no matter how passionate, and this is a passionate conversation, but what I'm saying to you, that's a matter of historical fact at the present moment. You asked me, why haven't I put forward? That's not the question. The questions were all Christian situations where we're supposed to push holes in it. If you ask me, what is the worldview that would liberate us? I would point to our attempt at liberation should look like this. The only time African people have
let me ask you this question.
I'm in the middle.
Your worldview about liberation.
This is where Sean, you said,
what I want to do is put you on the ropes. Your idea, your worldview, your idea about liberation. Please tell us, inform this audience. Where is that working in the world? And what group of people, what black group of people is it currently liberating? Please explain that to us.
So now let me show you what you just did. These thousands of people that you just talked about, I asked you a question. You read a list of people. Nat Turner was melted and turned into a satchel and a belt.
That's irrelevant.
How is he a liberator? You think that I'm speaking down on him. I'm just speaking about the reality. I asked you a question. Show me where the version of Christianity that you have that's being used somewhere in this planet, and we are getting free by it, and you can't answer it.
I actually did. I actually did.
You keep telling me not to interrupt you, and now you're interrupting me.
Wait, one second, guys. We got to slow it down here because Malik, I actually really wanted you to finish that point. We never got to finish it.
I wanted to finish it.
Because you were about to break down what the worldview is that you believe actually can lead to liberation. So please go ahead and finish that point before we get to the next person. Go ahead.
So thank you. So in order for us to conceptualize this, right, as African people at this very present time in the world, we have to first understand what we are currently, how we became what we became, and was there ever a time that we were not this? Before we were colonized, before we were enslaved. When we talk about Egypt, and even when the brothers talk about Ethiopia and so on, West Africa, Timbuktu, Songhai, Mali, when we talk about this is pre-colonial, pre-European dynasties. And those people had a form of divinity, and that divinity allowed them to become what they were. And in us reasoning historically, we realize that at a certain point in our relationship with international peoples, namely Europeans, we saw our decline to this day. A glimmer of the most successful liberation attempt in history took place in Haiti. And that is where our people captured, embraced their cultural tradition, their ancestral traditions that go back to the continent that predate the influence of Europeans. And that was the first successful liberation of our people to gain our independence. Later on, we were conquered again. So my worldview is this. It's simple. I've seen, if we just to balance just the years, we've been slaves, enslaved, and in what Saidiya Hartman calls the afterlife of slavery for the last hundreds to thousands, as Jared said, is the last 1,000 years have been the worst period of time for African people. My worldview is this. There has never been a narrative in existence where the African could remain the African and have a relationship with divinity. She's always had to convert to something else to have a relationship with what's called the true and living God. I understand, you ask me what I believe is not what I believe. We deserve to ourselves, we deserve to give ourselves an opportunity to test our social theory of change by being African and seeing if African is enough to liberate us. Because how long do we need to wait? You asked the question about the racial identity of Jesus. I would argue that if there was a person waiting floating in the universe who had the same racial makeup, ethnicity as us, he would have come already to save us.
Malik,
we have suffered enough.
Can I jump in and ask this question here? Because I think for the most part, because what I'm trying to get a glimpse of is your worldview, because that's really where the source of the solution is. And
I think I made it clear.
No, I know. Let me finish here, because you were saying pretty much allowing us to truly be our African selves without having to convert to anyone else's theology, or a doctrine, whatever. Now, the interesting thing is, when it comes to being African, Africa is such a large continent. So even what it means to be African, what does that look like? Because even on different sides of Africa, I mean, he just said that Ethiopia is literally a Christian nation. So what part of Africa are you describing when you say be African? What part of Africa do we need to actually emulate when we say we want to be African?
I never said that Ethiopia is a Christian nation, nor would I ever say it, because it would be a historical nomer. The word Christ is a Greek name, so we would have never used that terminology to describe our divinity. That's what's been placed upon us. Now, to answer your question, Africa has a common thread of two main characteristics, and that is ancestral veneration. Then there's also an oracular system that we use in our ability to channel, to reach our ancestors to act on our behalf. And that is the commonality throughout the top of Africa to the bottom of Africa prior to European Arab invasion. And so that is what I'm saying, is that we deserve, for our children's sake, how many more years can we go on believing in something that is waiting in the nebulous, waiting for us to come save us, when we can't even remember? We can't even remember an attempt at liberation using our tools and technology to liberate us. And that's my worldview. African sovereignty to save us.
But that's not actually a worldview. That's essentially a hypothesis. You haven't articulated a worldview as in how you answer the questions: where we come from, where we're going, why are we here, what actually matters. You haven't answered. You haven't shown. All you have done is postulated, right?
Yeah, and he asked me my worldview, my brother.
Hold on.
But hold on. I was still in. The camera was still focused on me. You're telling me what I. You're telling me what I didn't say. He asked me a very singular question. You're asking me a more expanded question. So I would like for you, please, Damon, I'm gonna say this just straight up. I would like for you to quit speaking that way, because the way that you're speaking, it insinuates that on this side is some Hotep type business, and on this side is the intellectual, scholarly, and academic. You see, I speak to the soul of my people. I'm not trying to sound smart, because the pellet, aerosol pellet, was invented by an educated man. The polar ice caps don't melt as a result of people who lack education. Education has not saved us either. So the type of intellect that you espouse has not liberated us either. But there is historical record, as I pointed out, what our brothers and sisters did in Haiti as an example that we can say, aha, maybe there's something more to our ancestral belief system, spiritual system, that if we build on it today, we can move forward. What you see on the continent of Africa now, which probably has no concern of yours, because you're so focused on academic and Europeanism.
Now Matt, let's give Damon an opportunity to respond to some of these things that you're stating.
But I'm gonna say it. I know that he has to respond. But what you're seeing on the continent today, you see a movement throughout Africa where African people are decolonizing themselves from European power structures. And some of them are getting back to saying, hey, we need to also give them back their concepts of divinity. It's taking place today. But only in that way are we going to actually save ourselves from what the things that you're talking about.
So, well,
go after you, Damon. Jerome, you can go. I know you've been in there waiting, Jerome. You can go out right after Damon.
Yeah. So, I mean, the false dichotomy between being academic and this, it's what we're trying to ascertain is informed facts, right? So there's a method and an approach to doing that. That approach is not, ironically, it's not European, it's African. The way that I am approaching this conversation is African. The problems in the things that you are saying are manifold. So for instance, you're trying to get at a worldview that you never really articulated what your worldview is, because all you really want to do is really poke holes in Christianity. In reality, you're not being honest about that. The other thing is that you have ignored the fact that traditional African religion still exists in Africa, right? That is uniquely, indigenously, spiritually African, has never been colonized, has never been anything other than African. What you have not done is you have not shown how that has worked towards the liberation of African people, right? And so,
it wasn't the question, bro.
Hold on. The other part of that is this.
And you never answered any of my questions, by the way. Please.
Hold tight, Malik.
Hold on, Malik. Hold on 1 second. Let's get it.
Those African traditional religions still exist in Africa, and what you have not connected the dots on is how they have worked towards the liberation of African people, not only having existed historically, but in contemporaneously. And so, for instance, let's just go back to the 16th century during the transatlantic slave trade. You have to ignore the fact that traditional African religion was being practiced by people who, in their worldview, found no problem selling Black Africans that looked like them to white colonizers. You have not connected the dots on the fact that, in spite of the existence of African traditional religion, in tribal infighting is a historical reality. In fact, even among those who indigenously practice African traditional religion or spirituality. So just because it's African, you haven't shown why it's better and how it liberates, because it certainly didn't liberate the Africans that they went into the interior regions of Africa and captured in order to sell to white Europeans. It didn't contribute to liberation. What it contributed to was their slavery. And so you are really imagining, you have a fiction about Africa and spirituality that doesn't exist anywhere in history or in the world. It doesn't even work. It doesn't even work today. And you are assuming this is another fallacy. So it's essentially the East-West fallacy. So you hear people talk about, oh man, that's a Western mindset. And the idea is, well, even if it's a Western mindset, what makes the Eastern mindset essentially better or right or more moral than the Western one? The reality is that you can find Eastern and Western contours of thinking and believing and practicing in spirituality throughout history everywhere in the world. But there's nothing superior about Eastern thinking over Western thinking, and yet there is nothing superior about Western thinking over Eastern thinking. You also make the assumption that our education is steeped in Western colonialism. That's essentially what every Hotep says when they get cornered by facts. The reality is that I have learned both from Eastern thought as well as Western thought. And the fact of the matter is that you'll find truths in both centers and you'll find falsehoods there. And at the end of the day, all you are really doing is attempting to poke holes in Christianity, but you have not propped up a salient argument about why your worldview is superior. In fact, you haven't even told us what your worldview is. You keep saying you are.
That's not the subject matter.
No, it is, because that's what.
It's kind of not fair.
That's not only what I asked you.
That's not the question. I would have to take over the conversation to do that.
Sir. It is, because it's not only what I asked you, it's what the host asked you, and you kept.
I asked the host question.
You kept saying.
I pointed out Haiti.
Hold tight, Malik. Hold tight.
You kept saying you were offering a worldview But in effect, in terms of what worldview really means, you haven't done that. And so you're taking little bits and pieces of history. For instance, the Haitian Revolution. Well, the reality is that okay, that was wonderful. It literally led to the physical liberation of Haitian people under French rule. But historically, that also inspired many of the revolts here in this country during the time of slavery. And so the reality is that what you're pointing to, we have an actual historical example of how that influence did inspire. And the interesting thing is that who it inspired? It inspired Christians to revolt. We literally have the narratives of formerly enslaved people, and as well as the narratives of slaveholders. And from a documented standpoint, here is what slaveholders said: that the most problematic enslaved people on their plantation were Christians, because them reading the Bible and becoming Christians gave them dreams of liberation. It made them insubordinate. It made them run, and it made them see themselves as equal and as human and as equal to their white slaveholders. They
Who
said
said that, Brother Damon? I just want to hear who said it.
And why did they create a law to outlaw the drum then?
Yeah, I'll give you the quote.
Hold on. Let's let him struggle with that for a minute. Say it again.
I literally have an entire.
And that's my point.
No, hold on. What do you mean?
Said you quote, and now you're struggling.
No. I'm pulling it up on screen. I'm not talking off the top of my head. Thomas L. Johnson, 28 years a slave.
Who was that?
Thomas L. Johnson was a formerly enslaved person. Would you like for me to read what he said?
I just wanted to hear what you said. That's
okay.
all.
No, I'm
quoting. Want to interrupt.
This is an actual book in the Library of Congress. By the way, here's what he said. This
part is not necessary though.
Let him speak.
We gotta, because
you just asked for documentation. Okay, let me read this so that you can see exactly what I'm talking about when it comes down to this whole notion of whites being enslaved. So this is a formerly enslaved African Christian by the name of Isaac Johnson, who wrote a book. It was published in 1901, but it predates his time in slavery. It's called Slavery Days in Old Kentucky. This is found on page 24 to 25. And I quote, he says this: on this trip, Rosa accompanied the master, and his wife was left on the farm to attend the matters there. His wife was a devout Christian Catholic, and while master was gone, she used to gather the slaves remaining each morning in her dining room and teach them prayers, and some of the younger ones she taught to read. When the master returned in the spring and learned what she had been doing, he was very angry. Well, I wonder why. Here's why. He had always told his slaves that he was their Lord and master, and now informed them that his wife should not have told them of any other Lord. From Rosa, we learned that he lectured his wife for her conduct about the following: if you teach them, these are the enslaved Africans, to pray and read, they may think that they are human beings, and we will not be able to keep them as slaves. The more ignorant we keep them about such things, the better slaves they are. The worst slaves that we have are those who know the most. They are the ones that we have to punish and keep them down. We have here from 20 to 200 slaves each year, and if they should know as much as we do, where would we be? They would murder us in spite of the law. After this, my dear wife, we must never teach a Negro the Lord's Prayer or any other prayer. It goes on and on. And wow. I can literally quote the actual statements of enslaved Africans practicing Christianity, showing that their slave masters didn't want them to learn to read the Bible, didn't want them to practice Christianity, and that those who did became the biggest problems on the plantation. That is why when we get to people like, for instance, Harriet Tubman, who was a born-again Christian, she took 13 trips down to the South and then back again to the North because she was motivated by what the Bible teaches about liberation. And so in the biblical worldview, we are not only taught that the Son makes us free indeed spiritually, but we are taught, because we are made in the image of God, that it is our God-given right to be physically liberated from bondage.
Yes,
and that is what motivated them. You still haven't given anybody that's practicing your worldview where it worked, how it worked. All you are doing is postulating and essentially hypothesizing. But where did it work? We just quoted history about how Christianity has liberated and contributed to the liberation of Black people.
Liberated us to what?
So there we go. So check it out here. I know, first of all, you went straight, you went Bishop Damon on that one. I heard it was something, I heard it in the voice. It was happening. So I still haven't got to my brother Pastor Jerome yet.
And because I want to get to guys, just real quick. We got 2,700 people in the chat. I wanted to get it to Jerome next. Shout out to Creole Butterfly. This is hot with the fire emoji. Shout out to Zion McGregor. Shout out to Pat Jr. I want to bless y'all for listening to Melik the Yapper for this long. It's not much, but it's something. Shout out to Culture Leotards. Only the U.S. cares about skin color in the Bible. That's oppression. Jesus came to make it plain. Your skin will not get you everlasting life. Your behavior will die daily. Forget what white folks are doing. Fix your mess. And shout out to Eddie Jones for sending us a big time super chat. And really shout out to everybody, guys. I did a couple of people favor with the $10 super chats, but we are highlighting $20 super chats. Of course, keep them respectful, because I literally just read these things. I don't read them before I read them.
Absolutely. Is Christianity the white man's religion? That's what we're discussing here tonight with these four brothers here on set.
Absolutely. And I dropped the poll, guys. We already got 1,200 votes. I'm getting ready to close this just shortly. Should the racial identity of Jesus matter? So far, we got 44% of people that say absolutely, and the rest of the people in the chat are saying it does not matter.
Interesting.
But, yeah, very interesting. But really quick, Jerome, I want you to chime in wherever you feel most moved on this conversation. But once you do that, I do want you to add in some of those sources and footnotes that prove Jesus existed. If you
that was an important part of
the
question as well.
Yeah,
that was a very important part that Gerard posed.
Yeah,
go ahead, Jerome.
So Melik hasn't defined liberation. He has not defined that, like what the liberation is. So the finish line keeps adjusting.
Does anybody want to ask me?
That's typically what happens with conversations like this. So it's like the only thing he did say was just us being our African selves. And so when you talked about these things before colonization, there are several names from the 2nd, 3rd, and 4th century that were Christians before colonization. Tertullian, who gave us the concept of the Trinity, was a Christian. Perpetua and Felicity, 2 African female martyrs in 203. You're talking about giving up their lives for their sake of their faith. Lactantius, Pachomius, Shenouda the Great, the concept of reflective meditation and having a monastery to Lord Yahweh. These are African Christians long before colonization over in Africa. So yes, Africa was polytheistic, but you had tons of monotheistic believers in Africa. So them being their true African selves, they saw the Lord Yahweh as God. They saw one God as the true God. They embraced and shaped theology and apologetics and these methods before the Socratic method, which is Socrates. And that's what Damon was talking about, is what he's doing to try to get you to actually answer comes from African intellectualism. But these are maybe, and again, I'm not assuming, but maybe you don't know these names. And so when you talk about us getting back, it's the family. In the book of Genesis, God establishes a family. The breakdown of our community is the breakdown of the family. And so it's not that Christianity isn't working, it's that we're not working it. You're seeing a rise of, and I know it's a whole nother topic, but you're talking about homosexuality, the breakup of the family, depending on the government. These are things we have to own in our community. When we actually submit to Lord Yahweh and we don't have several baby mamas and we stay committed to one woman, this is bone of my bone and flesh of my flesh, which is in the Bible. When it says, fathers, don't provoke your children to wrath. When we're not hiding income to not pay child support because the Bible wouldn't allow us to do that. If we submit to what it says, our families stay together. We're not in debt. We have generational wealth. We have my church right now. We're building a STEAM program. We're raising money to teach coding for free, video production for free, credit unions, educational centers, all come from the historic Black church to liberate, to empower, to give us money, to create generational wealth. So it works when we work it. So the issue is not Christianity. The issue is not God. The issue is not that it's somehow oppressing us. It's that there are many Black people not living under the lordship of Christ, and they are seeing the results of that in their lives with broken families, divorce, children that need counseling because the families don't stay together, promiscuity, glorifying drugs, glorifying rape, glorifying thuggism. This is what's happening when you don't live under him. So the issue is not Jesus. The issue is men and women ignoring and not living under his lordship. So true liberation is submitting to your creator. And when you submit to him, you get the fruit of the spirit: love, joy, peace, patience, kindness, goodness, gentleness, faithfulness, and self-control. And so the issue is not him, it's us. And when you see churches and people that truly live out that, we see the benefits, we see the fruit. We see that within our churches. You see the marriage rate higher in those places. And these are numbers and things you're not looking at. There's a book called The Great Dechurching that gives you stats on deconstruction as well as stats on solid things happening in the faith. Again, another source. And so I'll end here. We started this conversation. This is an original book from 1970 by Dr. Tom Skinner. This is not a new conversation. This is not a new conversation. This is actually a signed copy. And he was talking about how Black is the gospel, dealing with the same thing that Hoteps of his day. I'm not saying you're Hotep. I'm talking about the book. Hoteps of his day. I want to be respectful. I don't want to mischaracterize you, but that's what he was did. So it's the same conversation. We got the African memory of Mark. Mark was a Cyrenian Jew. An African man wrote the Gospel of Mark. In fact, there's something called Markan priority. His gospel was written first. We can go to the Cushites. A Cushite, a Black, Nubian, dark-skinned African saved the prophet Jeremiah. You can go to the Kedarites in the Bible. So when you have all these things, and there was a book that started all off called The Black Presence in the Bible. There have been plenty of things written. And so the reason we keep giving sources is because we know you guys aren't Christians, and I don't want to assume those that are in the chat. We know that everyone in the chat is Christians, and we want to provide sources. And of course, my book got 246 citations in it. 100 books went into this one book because I'm not telling you just trust me because I'm a pastor. No, before I became a Christian, my issue with Christians is that they could not freaking answer questions. They could not answer questions. And so I wanted to create a resource that actually answered those questions. So I'll go there because I know it's late. We talking about letting people on, but I just wanted to go there to give them those names of historical figures before colonization, and to give you the issue that's happening in our community. It's not that Christianity is that we're not living under the lordship of Christ, and we are seeing the rotten fruit of that in our community. If you obey the Bible, you're going to be a good husband. You're going to be faithful to your wife. You're going to take care of your children. You're not going to hide income. You're going to work, because if you don't work, you don't eat. That's in the Bible. So if we follow it, we'll see the fruit of that in our community.
Thank you, Pastor Jerome.
Yeah, let me go ahead and close out this poll, by the way, guys. Should the racial identity of Jesus matter? That's where we're ending this. Appreciate you closing us out, Jerome. And we got 56% of people said no, it does not matter. So I'm closing that out before I drop the next poll. And guys, we just got a bunch of super chats come in. Let me read those. Shout outs to Minister Chris War. And I can't read the rest. He said, he is Lord of all, or not Lord at all. Shout out to Roger Holmes, says, man, Damon and Pastor Gay, if y'all don't come with those receipts and coupons. Shout out to James Booker Jr., says, I am loving this. Christianity being a white man's religion is a white man's lie. Shout out to Manifest Glory for dropping those memberships. And shout out to Couture Leotards for just holding down the chat so wonderfully. Her and the rest of the moderators really holding it down.
Shout out to the moderators.
Sending in super chats. And she just gifted 5 memberships, which is incredible.
Let's get it.
We appreciate appreciate you so much.
Another
Absolutely.
one.
I like that one. And guys, I want to go ahead and move into the next part of the conversation. And I'm actually going to go ahead and drop the link to join the chat. I'm getting emails and DMs.
Yes.
Listen, y'all better come on here. I want y'all to express yourself wherever you stand, but I want you to absolutely be respectful. And anybody who joins us, we're going to put you on mute until we ask you to unmute, because we do want to show respect for the 4 panelists we got this evening. And Jerome brought this up. He really kind of introduced the conversation. He didn't even notice about black churches. And
Yes.
this is just, especially when it comes to black men. I mean, black men seem to be, really having an issue with black churches and are trying to find ways, to make a decision on if they want to join the church, how they want to join the church, and how to make decisions about joining the church. And I think one of the main issues is understanding, what the black church actually has done and does do for the community. So I want to go ahead and open this question up to the floor, and we'll start off with Malik and Jared. Guys, do you think that the black church helps or hurts black people?
Go ahead, man.
Jared needs to go.
Hold on, wait, Jared. Look, listen, Jared. Don't be polite, brother. All right, go ahead and speak your piece, man.
I think I would like the brothers to be a little bit more genuine in some aspects. I think one of the questions that was just asked, because I didn't get a chance to say anything on that last segment, is where is there a great, what Malik was alluding to, where is there a great black Christian nation? We have a lot of great, I think y'all did a great job of listing some individual Christians that are great. I give you that. Martin Luther King was great, and he was a Christian. But I think he was also in his divinity as a priest, as a pastor. I think our people created a priesthood life existence in our culture and our civilizations. There's plenty of documentation on that. When we look at our culture, John Henry Clark, y'all talked about hidden colors earlier at the beginning of this, at the very beginning of our talk. We sat at the feet of nearly all of the elders that Hidden Colors discussed, that had conversation about. And one of them, of course, is John Henry Clark. One of the stories that John Henry Clark talked about, not in Hidden Colors, but in one of his pieces, and certainly in his lectures, he talked about Queen Nzinga. And Queen Nzinga, as the Portuguese were attempting to force Christianity upon the Angolan people, they weren't called the Angolan people, of course, then, as they were attempting to force, and she was using and having to engage the Portuguese politically at a certain time, she acquiesced politically to go ahead and accept Christianity, but not really in her heart of hearts, but knowing that they had achieved some level of strategic gain in her area. He talks about going up to Portugal to sign a treaty, that she went to Portugal. And when she got off the ship and whatever and began to walk around, she began to see the squalor that those people were actually living in. That feudalism, in the type of way that the European was living, they weren't living up to what they were actually saying about their religion, Christianity. So she was like, there's no Christianity going on here. Because what I'm going to share with you about African culture meant people didn't go without food. People weren't thrown away. It had such a society and such a social living, and it wasn't a perfect society. People work extremely hard in order for these societies to create themselves. And that is as a result of a long cultural history, being around for an extended period of time. So the squalor that she saw that the inequity, the inequality, all that she saw, people starving on the streets, that was problematic, because it was unimaginable for that to occur in her country. She's never seen such. And so they document that. And so when we talk about African culture and civilization, our cultures and civilization did a lot of things extremely right. Our humanity within the culture, our spirituality was the culture. And Melick alluded to that earlier as well. So when we say Africa and the African, our culture, spirituality was and still is our answer. It was our answer when we also had to deal with rebelling and creating revolution against the European. About what Damon said earlier, I don't have a problem with Christians revolting, and they did. But also, they created laws outlawing everything that was African, literally creating laws against everything, like the drum. You cannot drum, especially here in America. You could not drum anymore because they realized what the drum was doing, that it was such a cultural signature of communication that it became too problematic. So literally here in the Americas, they were trying to drown out anything about the African that pull it all up out of you. Now, my great-great-grandmother came on a renegade slave ship from Sierra Leone when she was 13 years old. And so what did she carry with her? She carried with her African spirituality as well, right? And so now to your question, brother, repeat it one more time because I want to.
Is the black church helping or hurting the community, the people?
So in the 19th century, the black preacher was one of the most significant and important people for our people, and the black church was. But guess what they called themselves? Especially one in particular, the African Methodist Episcopal Church, as an example, is just one. And we still refer to ourselves as African in the 19th century. We was extremely strong. The educator was one of the most important people, and the journalist was one of the most important people. I would put those three people and those institutions that were behind them as some of the most significant folks of the 19th century. Something occurred when it changed over into the 20th century. So the black church did our conversion in the 20th century from African to Negro to nigger to colored and all of this other stuff. We began to do something new and different. And I don't think it was just the church, but I'm saying the church, along with other organizations, along with us, began to disintegrate our cultural aspects, which began to weaken who we are as a people. And so when you're talking about African culture, you're talking about African people, African culture has always been the answer for us for our liberation. And so the church has done some liberation work. That's why I'm saying I'm going to be genuine about some things. The church has done some things, but y'all not being genuine about who we have been as African people without Christianity, about African culture and civilization without Christianity. That's when we was at our strongest. That's when we created one essential thing about African culture and political culture is that we created entire nations under a spiritual banner based upon that culture and based upon that family. Other cultures didn't. They had temples, they had mosques, they had other religious centers, but they didn't have a full comprehensive culture of spirituality. And that's what I would push back on you all when we talk about. And please answer the question. And I think we still didn't get an answer on this, brothers, and I apologize. But where's the great Christian civilization? We have great Christian individuals. You two brothers are great Christian individuals. I'll give it up to you. But where is the great civilization of Christianity?
So we keep going off topic because there's so many questions to answer.
We just got to have a part two.
Yeah, we got to. We really got to. We're going to save that one because I really want to stay here on the black church just so we can at best try to stay on topic.
And I'm going to go ahead and drop that link in the chat right now for people to go ahead and come up and join us.
Absolutely. So, oh man, it's about to go crazy backstage. I'm going to go ahead and what's that noise in the back? There we go. I'm gonna let Malick go ahead and answer the question here before we move on to my brothers. to my brothers, my Christian brothers. Malik, is the black church helping or hurting our community?
Well, I don't think that, I think the best way to answer that question, for me to answer it as it's asked, would be to concede, or I think subordinate the character that African people have, the souls of African people that they have prior to being inside of that building or representing that building and the faith that the building represents. So for me to answer that is this: the black church as it exists today represents an ideology that is, from my perspective, convoluted. The brothers have done a great job of expressing that there are two, is what I understood. There are two versions of the Bible. There is the one that is whitewashed. There is the one that is embraced and inspired by an inspired African people. And I'm saying, when you look at our predicament that we're in today, I've only asked the question, I think, 3 times at this point, and I think Brother Jerome did a great job of expressing, if you do these things, these are the fruits of that of those acts. But Jared asked the question, or rephrased the question that I have. So the way I would answer the question is by getting clarity as to where is this profound black neighborhood? Where is this profound black city? Where is this profound black side of town? Where are these profound black people? When our brother expressed about Christians revolting, and he asked me a question and I answered, I guess he just didn't accept my answer when I mentioned the Haitian Revolution, and the solution is simply being an African in its entirety. That is actually the solution, our African culture. But the thing that I'm hearing in the fullness of the conversation is that I've been trying to express the shortcomings of one and the other deserving the opportunity for us to pursue. As African people, we deserve the right to pursue an African alternative. When he was expressing, Brother Damon was expressing about Christians revolting, that revolution was profound. Nobody in their right mind of African ancestry would sit here and speak ill of Harriet Tubman. But as humans, we have the ability to critique the movement. So when you're hungry, your idea of freedom is simply to eat. You're not reading the labels and making sure there's no the amount of fat and the amount of calories in it. So our people in slavery, inspired to be free, maybe being in the North was just what you thought freedom was. But clearly, reading that list of people who thought freedom was just coming out of shackles and being in the North or not being whipped, we have to agree that that wasn't a complete concept of freedom. But I would venture to say that our people needed a better, a more comprehensive concept of freedom. Freedom through the eyes of formerly enslaved people is inherently problematic. Why? Because they've actually never fully envisioned what freedom is. So rounding out, does the black church help or hurt black people? My answer is that black people, without knowledge of self, without a profound knowledge of their own history, and more importantly to me, a knowledge of their and an embracing of their history and culture, hurts our people, regardless of the institutions that we find ourselves inside of, inclusive of the church.
And guys, listen, we got 2,500 people in the chat. I think we almost hit 3,000 tonight. So the conversation is definitely one that the people need. I dropped this poll in the chat, so please go ahead and chime in before I get ready to close this out. Does the black church help or hurt black people? And guys, anybody looking to join the conversation tonight, we are going to bring people on briefly. I see we already got people piling up in the back room. But before we do that, I want to have Damon and Jerome give an opportunity to go ahead and answer this. Guys, does the black church hurt or help black people?
Yeah, so anybody thinking that the black church hurts black people is not being cannot be honest about what history in our country has shown us. And I notice how careful these two gentlemen have been to answer that question, to avoid the affirmation that it has been helpful. The reality is that we've got CVS length receipts on that, and all they really still have is conjecture. So, for instance, let's talk about the African Methodist Episcopal Church, the African Methodist Episcopal Zion Church, which is called the Freedom Church. Listen, these denominations still exist. And so he talked about, what does freedom look like? Well, you want to know what black Christians, how they envision freedom? They didn't just envision it as freedom from slavery or freedom, physical bondage, or just getting to the north. They envisioned marshaling and controlling the education of black people, which is where the historical black colleges and universities come from. Black Christians and black Christian institutions created that so that we could be educated, and not just in theology, but educated in the liberal arts, educated from a technology standpoint, educated from an agricultural standpoint. That's where you get schools like FAMU, agricultural and mechanical universities. That was an idea that was put forth in conversation with Black American Christian leaders about what liberation actually looks like. Not only that, but I could go on and on for days about the black churches that are not only providing health care till this day. We're not just talking about 100 years ago. Till this day, health care, economic banking institutions, so that their members can actually borrow money and in order to be able to purchase homes, that are building housing units for people in their community, are educating our youth, providing technological not only exposure, but opportunities for them to actually be able to use computers, get tutoring, have access to information that they may not have because of their economic, socioeconomic conditions. The reality is that the black church historically has, and till this very day, continues to address the socio in this country par excellence.
We losing Damon a little bit.
You breaking up, Damon?
Yeah, we losing Damon a little bit. So I'm gonna let's go ahead and pause, Damon, and you could just jump in right there, Pastor Jerome.
So my answer.
Hold on.
That was an act of God, by the way.
Hold on, wait.
Contrary to popular opinion.
Hey, Jerome. Hey, hold on, wait. I'm sorry. Heads up, Damon. You kind of went out. We lost you for like the last 10 to 15 seconds. So we kind of lost that message. So if you can just kind of really just summarize it and close us out so we can get to Pastor Jerome, go ahead and give it to us.
So the black church has addressed every socioeconomic, physical, physiological, and spiritual need and plight of black people in this country. And there is not another black institution, non-Christian, that has come remotely close to that. And again, alternative black African spirituality continues to exist. It never stopped existing. And yet these gentlemen can explain what it has done for not only indigenous African people, but what it has done for African Americans. So we don't have to hypothesize and offer conjecture. We have CVS length receipts on what the Black church has actually contributed and continues to contribute to the Black community. And so at the end of the day, there's only one answer to that question, and that is it helps. It cannot be stated with any modicum of honesty that it has harmed the Black community. And that is not to say that it is perfect in any way. But overall, the question is, by and large and abundantly, a resounding yes. The Black church is the most helpful institution in the Black community, and there's nothing that even remotely comes close.
Wow.
Powerful words. Pastor Jerome, what you got for us? Close us out so we can go ahead and bring our initiates on for the hotline.
Absolutely. So because Damon, I concur with everything he said. I want to deal with the heart of the question as to why this is a question. So that my answer may shock you a little bit. So in addition to agreeing with him, I will say this: the hurt aspect, it depends on what Black church you go to. The prosperity gospel within Black communities has hurt us because it has emphasized the pastor. It makes the pastor the head of the church when the Bible says that Christ is the head of the church. The prosperity gospel has hurt the Black community because it makes the pastor the focus and getting him a Bentley or an S-Class as opposed to serving the people. The prosperity gospel within a Black church has hurt us, but let's give you some facts. The average church in America is 67 people. So the pastors you see on TV with the Gators and the Jets, they do not represent the vast majority of Black pastors. If you say that, you are historically and just numerically wrong. Most Black pastors are serving their communities. And so the issue is also biblical illiteracy. So when you see them dropping money at their feet, that is in the Bible. But the problem is they don't finish reading the verse. In Acts chapter 4, when they drop money at the apostles' feet, the Bible says the money went to the people who were in need. So if your pastor got you giving him a tip for a good point, he is not someone that you should follow. So it does overall help, but because we're not reading our Bibles and we're dropping money at feet and we're buying jets and we're letting the pastor tell his church not to give to the poor, those are the Black churches that hurt. And so they talked about being authentic. That's why I wrote a book about whitewashing, conceding that there are aspects of our faith that have been whitewashed, but that's not Jesus's fault. There are also Black churches that have succumbed to the prosperity gospel that hurt our communities. And that's why you see them within walking distance of a Section 8 neighborhood and not doing any institution building. This is why we're building a STEAM program at my church so that they can get things that are going to help them make money. So I'm not just telling you about heaven and the afterlife. I'm also empowering you in this present life.
There you have it.
Incredible.
It's about that time, family, because I know y'all been waiting patiently back here, and it has been a nice, lengthy episode. Definitely. Here. This is dense. This is jam-packed. Thank you for all of my brothers here that are on here having this hard conversation, but we're gonna get to these super chats and we'll get to the initiation hotline.
Absolutely. I'm gonna close out this poll real quick. Does the Black church help or hurt Black people? We got 62% of the people say help and the rest say hurt. And I'm gonna go ahead and close it out. And guys, click the link in the chat if you want to join this conversation live tonight. Shout out to Mia Karg, says, guess we're conflating modern day challenges in African politics, traditions, culture, community, and spirituality, blaming Christianity. Irony, more than 55% of Africans practice Islam. Shout out to A Girl's Guide to God, says Galatians 5:1 is the true definition of freedom. We are free when we realize that God is above all men of this world. Therefore, this world system does not enslave me or any of us who believe in Jesus. Shout out to the symbol of peace for a super chat. When you come into covenant with Jesus Christ, you are no longer Jew or Gentile, Greek or barbarian, Black or white. We are all one. And what does that say?
Had to hit that boy that reading rainbow real quick.
Mashiach? Is that what that says? Somebody help me with that.
I can't see it. I can't see it.
Mashiach. Okay, cool. Shout out to Zion McGregor says, Jared argued for a romanticized view of African history that excluded the historic conflicts between the kingdoms of Kush and Egypt and African tribes participating in capturing slaves for the Dutch, Spanish, and the Portuguese. And shout out to Symbol of Peace again for sending over these complex super chats. Shout out to still arguing descriptive versus prescriptive. Just because the practitioners aren't living up to the standard does not mean the standards themselves are bad or failing. And shout out to Creole Butterfly. Yahweh is the head of the church, not Yeshua.
There you have it. Lionel, take us into the hotline real quick. Let's get to it.
I know when that hotline blink, that can only mean one thing.
Oh, all man, this hotline is about to be off the chain.
So hotline is buzzing backstage. We got a bunch of people backstage. Lionel, let me know who's going to come up on stage first. Who we got? Jenga first.
Jenga.
We got Jenga coming up here first.
Man, you got a bright light behind you. Okay, there we go. Jenga.
Jenga kind of dressed like Django a little bit. We got
Stop.
Hey, my brother came on here with the whole suit on, brother. What's up with you, Jenga? How you feeling, brother?
I'm good, man. My name is John Busada. I am a scholar. I would encourage everybody to look up my scholarship. It's on my website, planetarychess.org. But I have a paper called The Fabrication of
Hold on, wait, one second, just so we can get it here. And this is my bad, because I didn't let everybody know exactly what's going to go down. So when you come up, I want you to give me your name, your age, and your location. And right after your name, age, and location, I want you to brief and brilliantly tell me on this one here your thoughts on that. I don't like keeping it that wide, but it's going to be that kind of that kind of hotline. Give me your thoughts on which side you stand with here. Is Christianity the white man's religion? Yes or no? So go ahead, brother. You say your name is Jenga. What's your age and location?
I'm 41. I'm in Beaumont, Texas at the moment. And I stand with Pan-African brothers on that.
Got it. Okay, stand with the Pan-African brothers on this one here. So you do believe that Christianity is the white man's religion?
Well, it was organized. They touched a little bit on the Council of Nicaea, but they didn't really get real deep into it. And the question is, why was the Council of Nicaea organized? And it was organized by Constantine because there was many different sets of Christian religions. It was people who thought Jesus was born a man and then became a god. It was people that thought he was a god and then he became a man. But it was also people who thought he had no human nature at all. And so Constantine had to gather everybody together so that they could figure out the controversy here. Now, at that meeting, we find a whistleblower by the name of Arius of Libya, who basically said that Jesus had no human nature at all, that he was Serapis Christus, which the brother mentioned earlier. And then if you go in the encyclopedia and look at, it's an edict by Constantine, still in the encyclopedia, and we talk a lot about sources. You can find this in a book called Misquoted Jesus by Dr. Bart Ehrman, that we see that there was many Christian sects at the time. But at the time of the Council of Nicaea, Arius was a brother who happened to be assassinated. So again, we have a whistleblower who said that Jesus wasn't real, had no human nature. This man ended up being killed. And then if you go to the encyclopedia today, you'll see an edit by Constantine that basically said if anybody had any of his works, we had to throw it away in the fire. So at the beginning of when Christianity was put together, you have somebody who's saying that Jesus wasn't real, this man was killed, and it's a cover-up at the very beginning of the organization of the religion. So I don't know how people want to justify that it's not organized by a white person when Constantine is the very reason, because they came up with the Trinity at the Council of Nicaea. That's the very reason people believe in Jesus.
Jerome, go ahead and respond to that, and then I want you to go ahead and go to that wide view.
Again, this is what's called an anachronism, people. My brother is educated, and he got it partly right, but there were some huge things that he got wrong. Number one, it's the Edict of Diocletian, and that was 303, and they were trying to get rid of Christian publications by burning or extinguishing them. I said Tertullian was in the 2nd century. So that is 200 years before the council met, brother. The council met in 325. Tertullian already existed before then. Tertullian was born before then, and we had the concept of the Trinity, and we had a Christian literature. Arius actually said that Jesus was a created being, that he was a created being. Athanasius was saying that he was what we call in Christian circles the hypostatic union, that he was fully God and he was fully man. And so you get in your councils a little mixed up versus your edicts, the stuff you said. And then Constantine did not create it. You had the Edict of Milan in 313. And again, I showed this book earlier, but it's called a pocket book, a pocket-sized book on church history. And so it's real late, but again, I just wanted to address the brothers' dates were mixed up, what happened there. That's why, again, in the Nicene Creed, it says begotten and not made, because the thing was not inventing Christianity. Jesus already existed. They were arguing about the essence of Jesus. Was he a created being?
Could I also?
Wait, hold tight, Jenga. Hold tight.
Jenga, honestly, man, we can't go back and forth because there's really not a solution that we're gonna find in this here. I wanted you to really just get your piece off, which you have. So thank you very much, brother. But I'm gonna let my man Damon go ahead and get his words in before we get the next caller on.
Yeah, and I'll be quick. I just wanted to build on what Pastor Jerome just said. So oftentimes you hear a lot of this stuff, conspiracy theory and historical revisionism around the Council of Nicaea, such as what Jenga just mentioned. But none of that is actually coming from history. So, for instance, if I was to say Constantine was 6'2", and he had a head full of curly red hair, the only way for me to know that is that I would have to be getting that from sources close to Constantine. I can't just make that up, right? So everything that we know about the Council of Nicaea comes from documents and history that were written during that time. And nothing that he said corroborates with what we know from, for instance, Eusebius of Caesarea, the historian that was at the Council of Nicaea that wrote his books about Nicaea don't mention any of what he just said, and he was there. So if we're going to believe anybody, we got to believe the person that was there. He wrote on the life of Constantine, the epistle of Eusebius, book 1, chapter 8, Athanasius, the defense of the Nicene definition. Athanasius wrote about the Council of Nicaea. And you have what you would call the synodal letter of the bishops in Africa. And then you have Eustathius, who wrote an excerpt in Theodoret's Ecclesiastical History, book 1, chapter 7. So everything that we can gather about how many people were there, where they came from, even their names, we know from actual historical sources. The reality is Arius was not from Libya. He was from Alexandria, Egypt. He had been a part of the church, and there had been 2 synods that excommunicated Arius in Africa 5 years before the Council of Nicaea. So this was a discussion that was going on the African continent by African Christians and African clergy long before the Council of Nicaea. Also, Constantine did not convene the Council of Nicaea. He hosted it, and he was not there. He had no contribution theologically, no contribution to the discussion at hand. He did absolutely nothing, didn't even attend. He just hosted it in the Byzantium part of the Roman Empire, which was in Turkey, which is where modern day Nicaea or Iznik actually is. That's why it was there. But he did not convene it. It was convened to address the excommunication of Arius, and the 318 bishops that were there were unanimous that Arius was wrong. They were not trying to figure this out. Orthodoxy about whether or not Jesus was God was already a held belief. And so this idea about various sects of Christianity, there were Christian cults, but none of those groups were considered to be orthodox, and therefore they were not part of the conversation. So this idea about various orthodoxies and various groups of Christians believing different things, that is a complete farce, and none of that corroborates with the actual documentation that we have. So this idea that he mentioned about the Council of Nicaea, that comes from urban myth and legend that's repeated in barbershops across the country, but it doesn't come from anything that's actually written from people who were there at the time, who were actually part of the conversation. I rest.
We appreciate that clarity. And let's go ahead and introduce Adam. Adam, can you hear us?
Adam is in the building. What's up with you, brother? Adam is actually a powerhouse in apologetics, man. It's a blessing to have you on the show. Welcome to Hardly Initiated, brother. Hold on, wait. Somebody got to get muted in the back.
In apologetics, man. It's a blessing to have you on the show.
Yeah, somebody listening to the show, guys. If you listen to the show on YouTube, go ahead and mute that.
Yeah, I'm hearing feedback from somebody.
Yes, just mute every single person, Lano. Mute every single person. Adam.
Yeah, there you go. It get a little ratchet in the hotline sometimes. Y'all got to make sure if you're backstage, you're absolutely muted. And by the way, when you're backstage, you got to watch the show on Zoom.
Yes.
Okay, so Zoom link, guys.
So Adam, give us a quick profile. Give us your age, your location, and just exactly what you do and which side you stand on.
So Adam, give us a quick profile.
Oh wait, Adam, you got to turn your YouTube off, Adam. I think that's you. Hold on, wait. Let me make sure. There you go. Unmute Adam, Lano. There you go. You good?
Yeah, I think you're right. That's my bad, man. Can y'all hear me now?
Yeah,
we can hear you perfectly.
Adam, come on. You're not new to this, man. What's going on over there?
Can y'all hear me now?
Yeah,
we can hear you. Can you hear us?
Okay, that's wild.
So hold on. Let's put Adam backstage real quick.
I can't hear y'all guys.
Adam, we're gonna
circle back around.
Circle back around. Let's get Adam. Let's get Adam back up when the audio is put together.
And I believe we got and you got to help me. We got Z in the chat. I believe it's Zaluo.
Is it Zaluo? How do we pronounce your name, sister?
Yeah, Z, you there with us?
Z, can you hear us?
Yes, can you hear me?
I can hear you, Z. How you doing?
All right.
I'm sorry, I think I fixed it.
Thank you.
Oh, my bad. You guys moving. I can hear you.
Yeah, so Z, go ahead and help me out here. Give me your age and your location.
All right, I'm 30 and I'm located in Atlanta.
ATL, you here with us? Okay, Z. So, first off, let me know where you stand on this. Is Christianity the white man's religion?
I personally believe that it is.
Got it. And have you been in here since the top of the conversation?
Yes.
Okay. After the conversation, has it changed your perspective, or are you still pretty much, did you hear anything new, or is this, pretty much all concepts, facts, and figures that you've heard in the past?
I've heard most of it in the past before.
Okay. Why do you believe that it is the white man's religion?
I believe it's the white man's religion because I'm African, I'm Liberian. I lived in Africa for 13 years. I lived in Ghana for 9 years. I lived in Togo for 4 years. So, and my granddad is the chief of my village, and he was a Zoe. And my mom is a Christian. And even talking to her and talking to elders in Africa, they couldn't even go to certain institutions until they converted to Christianity. So the reason why people are trying to romanticize Christianity is very odd to me.
Okay.
And
so essentially you're saying because of the experience that you had back home with how you saw pretty much how things was going down with Christianity back home, that pretty much sets the stage for your worldview that it is the white man's religion, essentially.
Yes. And also, when it comes to religion, like you're supposed to follow the religion of your people. The reason why majority of Africans follow Christianity is due to someone conquering the other. That's just history. That's just facts. So the reason why Hindus follow their religion is because it's for them. You and like a European should not be having the same religion. There's something weird there. Now, people can be honest and say that they have been Christian since they was a child, so they're used to it, and that's okay. but don't try and negate the fact of colonization and slavery and the reason why so many African people today follow Abrahamic religions.
So Z, let me ask you this here too. You said they should follow the religion of their people. What's the religion of your people?
So we are Zos, and
Okay.
that's a mono, like indigenous religion.
Got it. And let's say, do you think it's fair to say that all Africans should potentially be Zos, or should there be?
No, because there are many tribes in Africa. So every tribe has their own spiritual beliefs. Like Yoruba people are Ifa, Igbo people have their own, like every tribe has their own spiritual practice. Like everybody cannot be following like Christianity or Islam. The reason why these religions are so big in Africa is because of colonization.
Okay. Z, well, look, thank you so much for your
Yeah.
perspective, sister. I appreciate that.
And I think that might be Z. You know, she might represent quite a few people. I mean, for her to even still be listening to the channel and also, you know, coming in and chiming on this, thinking the exact opposite. And I do want to get Jerome and Damon's point of view. But Adam, I know we had you on briefly. Adam, could you help us out and address Z's concerns about this?
Is Adam muted?
Absolutely. Can you guys hear me?
Yeah,
Y'all
we
hear me
can
now?
hear you. We can hear you.
Okay, great. Yeah, so I would say that, and I appreciate, the sister's comments and never want to disrespect. So I'm just coming on, just, sharing biblical perspective. First of all, I'll say that in terms of the worldview that somebody adheres to, we ought to adhere to worldviews that are true. That is to say that regardless of what your identity is, regardless of what your ethnicity, race, whatever it is you want to say, however you identify yourself, 2 + 2 = 4, right? And so what we're arguing, I think this is maybe one of those misconceptions when it comes to Christianity. I'm not a Christian because my mom was, my grandmama was, or whatever else. I'm a Christian because Christianity is true. I'm saying that the Jesus account is not some sort of mythical feel-good story, but in the same way that 2 + 2 = 4, Jesus Christ rose from the grave. Thereby is a stamp of truth. That's a truth-making factor, if you will, when it comes to Christianity. And so, with all due respect to the sister, while I appreciate, we want to value our identity, we want to have value for all those good things. At the end of the day, I don't think that we should prioritize one's ethnicity or identity over truth. I think that we should be guided by truth. I wanted to say a couple other things, but I just want to make sure I engaged your question first.
Yeah, well, I'm curious, Adam. I mean, we got you on the platform. I mean, I said I'm very curious. We got you on the platform. You're one of the really great speakers on the documentary that we watched. So, what is it else that you wanted to share with us this evening?
Well, just real quick, I wanted to kind of chime in on one of those later questions, when it comes to, is the black community helping or harming, the black
Is the
community? I know
black
that was something that was in the
church?
chat. It seems like, is the black church, okay, excuse me, helping or harming? If I could just, and I'm not going to filibuster, but if I could just kind of in rapid fire, read off some real brief statistics, and I'm referring to the Pew Research Center. I'm drawing this from them, as well as the Givelify Institute, Givelify, who drew these statistics in partnership with the Lake Institute. Says that 3 in 10 Black Americans have turned to the church or other religious congregations for assistance. Right. When it gets to African Americans who are 30,000, making 30,000 or less, 4 out of 10 African Americans have turned to the church and so forth. So if you do the numbers, I'll make this quick. The church, in terms of people living today, African Americans living today, the church has assisted financially about 12.1 million African Americans. Almost 97% of places of worship. And they were polling churches with these statistics here. About 97% of them have at least one outreach program, and this gets into what Damon was talking about when it comes to reentry services, education services. I'm actually doing a study right now when it comes to banking institutions. When you look at from the civil rights era till now, there's been well over 20 banking institutions started by the Black church. And keeping in mind, there's only about 23 African American owned and operated banking institutions in existence right now. So we put our work in with respect to just tangibly helping our community. These are just cold hard facts. You know, at the end of the day, if somebody has a rent issue, if they late on their electricity bill, the reality is I'm a social worker by trade. This is my background. I've been doing social work for over 20 years. I'm not a pastor, but you know, the first thing they're going to tell you to do is go to the church. That's a fact because we all know that the ethic of the church, particularly here in America, has been to assist communities that have been disenfranchised. And this is not anything new. There's a reason why, okay? There's a reason why the church has always been a target of white supremacy. There's a reason why you had the bombing in Birmingham, right? There's a reason for that. There's a reason why between 1906 and 1921, I mean, we could just go beyond Tulsa, but you have the burning and just decimation of several Black Wall Streets, all of which had this one characteristic that runs all between them, aside from the ethnicity, is that the Black church was central in all of those communities, not only as an organizing force, but also giving the moral, ethical, and motivations, if you will, for people to strive and transcend the different types of oppression that we face as a people. That's why Dylan Roof saw fit just a few years ago to go to Emmanuel Church in South Carolina. You know, so what I would say is that if the Black church is not helping the Black community, why is it that white supremacists make it their business from our beginnings here in this country till now to continue to target the Black church? There's a reason for it. It's because we are doing a great deal of good. And it's not just history. This is right here today. If I had time, I would talk about all of the schools that have been started by Black churches and Black denominations. We can talk about, I guarantee you, I would defy anybody on here who grew up in a Black church like I did. Tell me you didn't have a fund helping folks go to college. Tell me y'all didn't have some sort of outreach ministry. We all know this. We all know this, right? And so I think what happens is, and I again, I don't want to filibuster, but what I would challenge the gentleman, I want to say is Malik and Gerard, forgive me if I've mispronounced your names. What I would challenge you to do, and anybody else who may find themselves in agreement with those brothers, to take a look at just flat out history. You don't have to believe Adam Coleman because he's a Christian. Read the historical record for yourself, and you will see that not only did Christianity provide the ideological and conceptual framework from which African Americans were able to overcome slavery, we have always been a powerhouse when it comes to our liberation from our history here to today.
Thank you, Adam.
There.
No, thank you.
Brother,
thank you very much.
Brother Ryan and Tashawn, remember, you're allowing us to also respond too, right? Just not.
Yes, I was coming to you guys right after that. I wanted you guys to go ahead and speak on this one. Jared, go ahead and give me your thoughts.
Just real quick that our greatest scholars, John Henry Clark, who wipes whose erudition, his intelligence already speaks to everything we just said. So the historical record is real. There was no slavery, first of all, in it. You want to do a historical record, there was no slavery in Kemet. So that was not true. And so when you think there were Hebrews who built the pyramids. The pyramids were already finished being built by the time the Hebrews came into Kemet. So there's so much history that the Bible is not even covering actual history. The Bible is a fictional account. And I want to read this. I know, like, it'd be like my man Damon, just to read this real quickly. In that.
And what is this, by the way, that you're about to read?
Maybe of your text. This is a work of fiction. Names, characters, businesses, places, events, locales, and incidents are either the products of the author's imagination or used in a fictitious manner. Any resemblance to actual persons living or dead or actual events is purely coincidental. Many of your biblical texts, you just look at the forward, already tells you that it's not a historical record. So if we're going to talk about history, let's talk about history. But a lot of the accounts, that's why I said we're not being genuine when we talk about a lot of the history. And our scholars have already dealt with all of this. And so can
I offer a brief response to that? Can I do that?
To actually try to revise it when we already won the argument against Europeans, I don't know why we're even reverting backwards.
Yeah, I'd like to.
Can I respond? Can I respond to that? Because I feel like he was engaged in my. I'm just asking.
Go ahead, Adam, but really quickly, because
I promise I'll make it quick. I promise I'll make it quick. And I say this with all due respect, Brother Jared. It's just very difficult for me to have heard that, and you're saying we want to be serious about history when you've made a number of serious serious historical errors so far. First of all, John Henry Clark, who you shouted out, he himself divulged that he drew his scholarship from white authors. That's who inspired him and was the foundation of his work. And so that was John Henry Clark. And so my thing is, you can't be out here talking about, being concerned about Christianity as a white man's religion when your founding father is explicitly said that he was drawn from primarily white scholarship. There's some hypocrisy there. Lastly, you scoffed earlier. Wait a minute. You scoffed earlier when we talked about the history of Jesus. In fact, I challenge you to go to any department of ancient history, with that type of perspective, because the fact of the matter is, this is the consensus among historians that Jesus was a historical figure, like it or not. The reason why we can say that with confidence is because if you go to the sources, the ancient sources, we can talk about Tacitus, Suetonius, Plinius the Younger. We can talk about Josephus. That's just extra biblical. We have, somebody can just do the homework. Go look up Tacitus. He wrote a work called Annals in 112 AD. By the way, it's before the Council of Nicaea, detailing, Jesus' crucifixion and the emergence of the Christian church. So the reason why we can affirm that Jesus was a historical figure is because it's multiply attested by multiple sources in the ancient world close to the date of when Jesus was purportedly, walking the earth. This is not controversial. This is something that you can be a stone cold atheist and affirm what I just said because it's the historical consensus because of the historical evidence.
Let me just add real quick to that, Adam, but you won't find one source 70 years after y'all so-called thinking he lived. You don't find any source during the time of his living. And guess what? Egypt kept critical documentation on everything. The Romans created documentations on anything. You have no documentation.
But weren't you the one who mentioned Alexander the Great, though, earlier? Was that you? Because we don't have anything within 70 years of Alexander the Great's life either. So if you're going, it's the pot calling the kettle black, right? That's not how historians work. That is not sound historical methodology. The fact of the matter is that when it comes to ancient figures, as Jesus would be, obviously in the first century, you don't have to have somebody who was living at the time. And to be honest with you, we do have some of the documents from the time. It's called the New Testament. So we do have sources.
We have source history. They wrote during that time. They wrote about all kind of figures. He's right.
So the Apostle Paul, right? Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John. These are historical documents that stone cold atheists. No, I would argue actually Apostle Paul would be writing in the 50s. I'm going to fall back out of respect for the host. I'm going to fall back out of respect for the host. I would love to take this up maybe in a part 2 because I think what we need is
so Adam, are you committing really quick? Are you committing to a part 2 on Hardly Initiated?
I'm committed to it. I'm locked in. You ain't got to ask me twice.
There you go.
Matter of fact, what time y'all got? You want to cut this one shorter?
Can I speak to the Sister Z, please? I want to speak about that.
Let's go, Malik. Go ahead, Malik.
Yeah, I really appreciate the sister having the courage to come on and speak like she did, because when we're talking about history, again, she's speaking from a very genuine place as to what happened. A lot has been said, in our conversations, and there's been a lot of misquoting, about what I've said, what I've heard, what was said that Jared said. But I appreciate the Sister Z because what she represented was a very real occurrence that happened where she lived. Then she also alluded to what we also know, because we keep talking about history. We know this happened all over Africa. We also know this happened in the Americas with the native population. We know that it happened in the South Americas with the native populations. This that I'm speaking about is the deculturalizing of a people. And in that process of removing their culture, what was taken from them was their consciousness around their history as it relates to their divinity. And all that, I would pray that you all would hear the essence of what I'm saying. But if you don't, you don't. But I'm grateful for a sister like Z, I don't want to mispronounce her name, Zilua from Liberia. What's powerful about what she's speaking is that she's given a historical account of the social function of Christianity as we've seen it in its more dominant form, how it affected Black and brown people. Now, the confusion that we exist in today, trying to determine which part of it is us, which part is whitewashed, which part of it is authentically speaking to us, all that I think, and I'm speaking for myself, but I know that I'm speaking for Jared, and prayerfully I'm speaking for sisters like Zilua and others who were the lesser part of those polls that Ryan read, is that when you take this concept and apply it to our plight as it is today, it is not to say that African people, that black people in America, that the church did not do anything. My father was a Southern Baptist preacher. I personally watched what he did for the community. What I'm saying, though, is that the psychological, the myriad, the complexity of our plight in the Americas, what you're finding is that where you see is what you started off reading, Ryan, Tyshawn, when you started off reading about this great falling away from the church, it's happening as a result of our problem is much more complex than the questions you all, respectfully, even as hosts, have asked. And so therefore, the great falling away is that what's happening in Christianity, coming from the likes of just speaking historically and intellectually and academically and citing sources, has not spoken to the soul of the people, the soul of the youth, and the complexity of our plight, not only here in America, but suspiciously all over the world where we are suffering in a very, very complex way, that the way that the dominant form of Christianity has been given to us is not serving. And that is all that I'm saying. And I pray that those who are perhaps not even right here, who are listening, hear that. And then that's what we're rooting for. That's what we're pushing for. So thank you.
I appreciate you, Malik. Thank you for coming up here. Listen, we about to close this thing down in just a few, guys. So go ahead. I want you to send your last few super chats in. We brought 4 powerful brothers up here to go ahead and try to figure out some answers on here. Is Christianity the white man's religion? All right. So it's been this one has been a very, for some people, triggering conversation. For many people, a hard conversation. Hearing perspectives that challenge your belief system. But again, it's a very important conversation.
And I believe we got Angela on. We got I believe it's Letta on, and I gotta find that other gentleman's name that's on here. But guys, do any of you disagree with or do any of you agree that Christianity is the white man's religion? Anybody we got up? Okay, wow, Angela, let's hear from you. So, Angela, listen, don't be afraid to raise your hand, Angela. That's what you stand on.
And go ahead, Angela, can you give me your age and your location?
Absolutely. Hello, my name is Angela. I am in New Orleans, Louisiana, and I'm 32 years old, born in Cameroon, West Africa. I grew up and I was raised there as well. I disagree that Christianity is a white man's religion for many reasons. One, the Ethiopian Bible is the oldest, and there's a Ethiopian eunuch that's mentioned in the Bible. And I'm sorry, may I?
No, go ahead.
And just to be clear, because I think we were confused at the beginning, you disagree that Christianity is the white man's religion.
Yeah, I disagree. It's not a white man's religion. There were Christians in Africa before colonization. There's a Berlin conference that happened in Germany, where Africa was divided as a piece of pie based on the resources. That's where colonization came in. But pre that, there were Christians in Africa. I lived in a village for 4 years, no electricity, and that physical darkness symbolized the spiritual darkness that was happening there. There are people that, and I know that this is a very nuanced conversation. There's so many layers to it. And from a lot of hard conversations with my now best friends and going to HBCU, shout out to Morgan State University, Baltimore, learning a lot of perceptions from this end of things. I think that because of slavery and being stripped of, being our African-American brothers and sisters, and I'm saying this so carefully because please hear my heart, because of, I'm saying with all the empathy and all the love in my heart. Because of that being stripped away and not having knowing who your grandparents were, there's a lack of identity there that people feel the need to want to dig back to their African roots to find out that sense of identity. And unfortunately, as someone who, if you've not lived in Africa, I'm telling you that African spiritualism, there are people killing their family members to inherit the land that their brothers own, or people doing all kinds of witchcraft, killing family members and loved ones. I mean, there's a dark side to it. So I think that idolizing, let's go back to our roots. No, we've seen it. I've seen it. And I don't want to go back to those roots. It's evil. People I don't want to hold up, but I just want to say that there's a glorification for let's go back to our roots, African spirituality. But no, as someone who lived in the village, I know my sister who came here earlier, she has a different experience. I have a different experience. And I've seen it firsthand how people are evil to their own loved ones because of a piece of land or piece of car, or killing people for small things that are so worthless. So I get it. The lack of identity makes people want to go that void in there. You want to find out who your great-grandparents were, where you were born. And trust me, I can't say that I understand because I've not experienced that. But I want to say that the answer is not trying to go back to African spirituality, because it's done a lot of hurt more than it has done any good.
Now,
so, thank you so much, sister.
Thank you, Angela. And I wanted to get, if Malik and Jared wanted to give some feedback on her. She said,
hold on, but I want to add something to that first, because let me tell you why this is so important here, because we could have did a whole section on this. One of the biggest things about, your ancestry or African, history in general is that a lot of what was practiced is taught in Christianity is actually witchcraft. Jared, actually, I think you mentioned Ifa, which you practice Ifa, and we have on record many people who study spirituality, especially Christian leaders, who speak gravely against Ifa as one of the witchcraft practices, voodoo, which you referenced as one of the witchcraft practices. And this is also tied into the African spirituality and roots that we're talking about we need to actually go back to. So let's get some clarity here, because here we have a sister who's been actually in the trenches of these spiritual systems and has seen some of the dangers and the evils involved with it. You guys are talking about, some of the wrongs of Christianity, but let's really figure this out. Are those African spiritual systems that we're talking about going back to, is that rightfully witchcraft? Is that right to name those witchcraft?
No, not at all. Not at all.
A formation of white supremacy that created labels on top of that. I want to go back to something that Jerome said earlier. And I can't do this to pastors, even though I know charlatan pastors, but not every pastor is a charlatan, right? So it's the same thing in African spirituality. Not everyone is good, not everyone is bad. It's the same thing. So you can't create a broad brush on a whole system is that way. So are there charlatans? Are there bad seeds? Absolutely. But that's on anything and everything. So I think it's to create that broad brush is and I still would say the type of evil and the things that are occurring were more so once we had more foreign engagement into Africa. And so and I know folks don't want us to romanticize. I think y'all romanticizing Christianity. Christianity has killed more people on this earth than anybody else, enslaved more people on this earth than anybody else. That's just straight up fact. But you won't deal with that fact. But to her point, can you find bad seeds? Absolutely. Are there great ones? There are great ones as well.
I would like to say also, just as Jared said, that they're reprobates in everything. So let's be clear. There are reprobates in every expression of divinity, political space, social space, and so on and so on. And we have our sister there from the Cameroon, but let's keep in mind, we also had our sister from Liberia who had another type of observation of it. So So when we make these gross, as Jared said, broad stroke assumptions, Tashawn, then you're gonna always end up in the position of taking that position as a fact. You're gonna find even in the church today, you all had a conversation about gay pastors in the church, where the Bible doesn't make a mistake about the position of homosexuality. It's in the church, but it's in the Bible, but you have it. So our position is not that Christianity is no good because there are gay people in the church. Just and from that same argument, you can't make the position that African spirituality as a whole is witchcraft. What is witchcraft? Idolatry, right? I'm certain that we can probably work out some kind of definition in there, except for the need to just disagree just for the sake of disagreeing. But even when it says that it's in the book, that the name of other gods should not even come out of your mouth. That is a scriptural fact, should be a Christian reality. And as I started off saying, you can't even name the days of the week. You can't even name the celestial bodies, the planets, without mentioning the gods of other cultures. But yet you'll skip over that if that should be considered a cardinal sin. So when you look at what the sister Zilu said, and then our sister from Cameroon, it balances out. And I just go back and retreat to the statement that there are reprobates in everything. It would be unintelligent to stand here and say that all aspects of African people in their relationship to the divine, even that statement, my sister, contradicts what Damon and Jerome have been saying in the beginning. Because if the ideology or the inspiration for Christianity as we know it today is heavily contributed to or inspired from African people, then African spirituality inspiring Christianity, you can't say that African spirituality is rooted directly to witchcraft. It's contradicting.
Can I respond to
absolutely
what's been said? So there's a lot of dancing around a number of things. One of the things that Adam mentioned is that Christianity as a faith and practice and worldview is believed and practiced by millions and historically billions of Christians on the basis of its veracity, its truth, and its transformation, not on the basis of it is native or indigenous to where I come from. And so again, the insult that's being made is that there have been millions of Africans from the first century until this day who have turned to Christianity that practice these traditional African religions, and to claim that they're now practicing Christianity essentially to suggest that they are being colonized or being brainwashed is to insult their intelligence, and is to even suggest that they have not seen a more superior worldview, and that they have not considered the truth claims of Christianity versus the spiritual practices that are native to their particular culture. And so there's a lot of insulting going on. And there's some historical assumptions being made that Christianity essentially only came into Africa by way of colonization. That is vehemently false. For instance, the young lady said that she's from Liberia. Well, I can show historically that Christianity was in West Africa, particularly in the area of Senegal, by documented evidence in the 1300s. You don't have no colonizers there. You don't have the French or the Portuguese. And so here's a quote, an Islamic historian, because of course Islam was there by that time, and it was essentially newer to West Africa in the 14th century. But Islamic historian Ibn al-Dawardari, writing to King Mansa Musa regarding Christians that lived in an area called Takur, which is modern day Senegal region, northwestern Africa, right? So he literally wrote to Mansa Musa asking why doesn't he conquer the area where the Christians live, because gold grew there. This is historical writing from the 1300s. So we have historical evidence that in the areas where many of our ancestors were taken from, that they were not by force, but by intelligent decisioning, practicing and believing biblical Christianity that was existing in the 1300s, in the 14th century, more than 200 years before the Portuguese arrived, more than 200 years before the French colonizers arrived, and greater than 300 years before the transatlantic slave trade. And so just because somebody's from Africa, even that particular region, doesn't make their perspective of Christianity nor history accurate.
There you have it. Let me tell y'all, we have officially achieved well over 3 hours in this conversation, and I feel like it's still so much more to be covered. I want y'all to let us know in the chat, because shout out to all the listeners in the chat. If y'all think we should bring apologetics to the platform so we could go deeper into these conversations, just put more in the chat. Just go ahead and put more in the chat. I want to see what the chat is telling us here. The first thing I really want to do, first of all, is really thank all of my panelists here tonight. All of my initiates that came up on the hotline, because this is a very hard conversation. We really have to be able to sit down and be real about what's going on and have these conversations. Because I think these conversations have been avoided so long. I know I can remember back years ago, just being a curious child, asking questions. Very simply, a lot of stuff that we talked about here today, and I was told not to ask these questions. I was told not to question God, and certain things just didn't quite feel or seem right. So I appreciate you, brothers, for actually doing the work, doing the research, and being able to have answers for these hard questions. Because trust me, somebody out here needed the answers.
Right.
Somebody out here needed it. I want to go ahead and close out with some final thoughts before we go ahead and end the show. So I'll go ahead and start with my brother Gerard, because he hasn't spoken in a while. We're gonna get some super chats in before we go ahead and get there.
Yep, we get some super chats in, then we'll go to Jared. Shout out to Sinatra O. Says Igbos of Southeast Nigeria are the Hebrews of the Bible. We are black and compose all 12 tribes, neighboring African tribes who practice various Afro religion. Igbos were forbidden from practicing. I really hope I pronounced that right. Shout out to Creole Butterfly. I'm over here singing the theme to. Shout out to Creole Butterfly. I'm over here singing to theme reading Rainbow. The Dark Ages were real. Did you do that on purpose? Notre Dame, one of the world's largest libraries, was just recommissioned. Somebody please state the adage regarding blacks and books. Shout out to Anna Dominique. Says, my church gave me about $3,000 this past October because I was struggling. I will never forget what they've done for me. Bishop Jaron C. O'Neill, he's on God TV. Shout out to that pastor for helping out Anna Dominique. Shout out to Mr. Phil Fox. All right, is it glitching? Let's go ahead and get those closing statements.
No, that's cool. Yep. That's cool. And first of all, Jared, I promise you, I got your name right. I grew up with my homeboy named Gerard. It was spelled the same way. That's why. But Jared, go ahead. Give me your final thoughts, brother.
Black folk are spiritual people, regardless. We're spiritual. We're religious. Even when we're religious, we out Pope the Pope. We out Muhammad. We, famous statements by John Henry Clark, who would always make that statement. Our faith is what saved us. It knocked out so many people are gone off this earth as a result of whatever. But we were able to survive as a result of who we are as a historical, faithful, spiritual people. And it was not just because of Christianity. It's not just because of Islam. We were here long before these systems came into being. So all I would want to just say is that we are a spiritual people. We have a long historical record on that. And we need to begin to make some sense out of that historical record.
There you have it. Thank you very much, Brother Malik. What you got for me? Give us the final thoughts that you want to leave the audience with tonight.
Sure. I love us, and I love the fact that we even take the time to have these kind of conversations. And again, my sincerest prayer, is that the ancestors give us more energy to seek out something more than what we've been experiencing, and to ask some of the very hard questions, like some of the ones that you all have asked. And it's clear to me in our conversation that we have, definitely two different definitions of liberation. And it is my belief that when our people were seeking to be free, they were not just seeking to obtain a better way of living inside of the captivity, a better way of earning, a better home to live in, a better education. They, over time, they lost that definition of freedom, and now it's simply social, whereas before it was cultural. So this was a great conversation. I appreciate, the opportunity to be here, be present, and I think it's definitely necessary to keep moving because, again, regardless of what all has been said on behalf of the church and Christianity, those numbers about the great falling away, they're happening for a reason. And I think some of the information that was espoused today are contributing to that.
Thank you very much, Malik. I appreciate that, brother. Let's go over here to my Christian brothers here. I'm gonna start with you. Let's just go ahead and start with Damon, man. What's your thoughts, Damon? What you want to leave the people with tonight?
Yeah, I would say that the irony in this conversation is that the real white man's religion is the pseudo-intellectualism that gave rise to pseudo-Africana studies, which is exactly what these gentlemen have been putting forth the whole night. So several times this night, tonight, the name John Henrik Clarke has been raised. Well, the interesting thing is that John Henrik Clarke didn't have any degrees in history, was not a trained historian. And here's what he said in that debate in 1996 with Mary Lefkowitz and Professor Martin Banal. He said that when he began to read European curiosity about Africa and names several works by Gerald Massey, who was also a pseudo-intellectual, no training at all, that put forth all of these ideas about stolen legacy from Africa and all this other stuff. He names Gerald Massey's works as authorities. Gerald Massey was a discredited pseudo-historian, by the way. He says that white radical writers set the black radical writers in motion, and that they didn't make the claims. That is, the black radical writers did not make the claims that they made until they saw the documents that were written by the white radical writers. And what were those kinds of documents? Well, they were the stuff like the Book of the Law by Aleister Crowley, Dorothy Eady, Helena Blavatsky in her Isis Unveiled, Gerald Massey, Ancient Egypt, Light of the World, and his book on natural genesis. All this stuff was predicated on false history about Africa, false Cometicism, none of these, and essentially occultic spirituality. All of these people were founders in movements like Theosophy, the Church of Satan, occultic practices, and all kinds of things. These were the people that John Henrik Clarke said he learned about Africa from, and that these so-called scholars that Jared is talking about, this is where they learned it from. And so when you start looking at, for instance, Yosef ben Yohanan, another black pseudo scholar that claimed to be a enlightened Hebrew teacher, he used all these same sources as well. And again, his academic record is also in dispute because he never earned any of those credentials either. And so what we always have coming from people who espouse these ideas is pseudo-intellectualism, historical revisionism, and building on the foundation and work of white pseudo-scholars and white pseudo-intellectuals. So the real issue is not whether Christianity is the white man's religion. It is the fact that Comedicism and Pan-African or Africanist studies is actually the white man's religion because it is built off of the false history and the false teaching of white pseudo scholars, not black ones.
Strong words right there. Pastor Jerome, we're going to go ahead and close out here with you. What you got for us?
Yeah, I wanted to thank Malik and Jared, and obviously you brothers for allowing us on here. As I stated earlier, quoting Dr. Tom Skinner in his book, How Black is the Gospel, this is a necessary conversation. And I do want to respectfully say I'm thankful for these brothers, because even though we obviously disagree on something very pivotal as eternity for us, but I do think it's important to understand that even for those that are listening or who will watch later, people in the Bible question God. I know people told you not to, but that's a biblical fallacy. People asked how long because they felt like God was slow. People questioned God's justice because they didn't understand his providence. So it is okay for you to have questions. It is a biblical posture to be able to question God, because we're saying that he's omniscient. So why would we tell the one who we claim knows everything, but then not be able to question him? And when we question him, we can get some answers. And what we find to the overarching question is that 4 of the women in his lineage were of Hamitic descent. You have the Kedarites, which means dark. You have Fenian, which means Negro or Nubia. Jeremiah talks about Taphanes, which means the palace of the Negro. All of this is in scripture. And so when you study the scripture, what you'll find is that our faith is not a white man's religion, and the answer to whitewashing isn't blackwashing. It is a faith of every tribe, every tongue, every nation, as recorded in the book of Revelation. And Jesus welcomes all who place faith in him. And this is why he says in Mark chapter 1, verse 15, the time is fulfilled. The kingdom of God is at hand. Repent and believe in the gospel. What is the gospel? The gospel is the good news that our Lord Yeshua paid the price for our sin, and that he also suffered. So he understands not only oppression, but he experienced. He understands being betrayed. He understands being let down. He understands broken promises. He understands suffering experientially. And that's what makes our faith true and palatable, because we have a God that is able to identify with our suffering, but also does something about it. And he promises to one day wipe away the tears permanently. And so I think that it's important that we have these claims and we have these discussions, because we're making a claim that there's only one way, and we're not giving faith-based answers to fact-based questions. But indeed, he lives and he is alive, and our ancestors understood that. I'll end with this. There was a former slave by the name of Josiah Henson. Through manumission, he got his freedom. With his freedom as a free man, he went back to the place where he was once owned, but he went back as a free man. And the master, I'm putting that in quotes because he wasn't, but his master in quotes was dead. And the master's wife called him Si for short. And she said, Si, your master is gone. He's dead. And Josiah Henson, with his identity, understanding his faith, looked back at this woman and said, no, madam, my master is yet alive. Because he understood who his true master was, and it was not a white man. It was the God-man, Jesus Christ. So our ancestors know the history. Our ancestors believe. Our ancestors helped shape the faith. And so I beg and I implore those that may be wrestling to trust him, repent, and believe in the gospel.
I am delivered.
There you have it. There you have it, family. Listen, I appreciate all you guys for your contribution here, your time. Thank you for all of my subscribers here. I'm asking everybody to subscribe if you already have not to the platform. We were able to get, shout out. It was a blessing how we was able to get in touch with Pastor Jerome, and Pastor Jerome was able to get us in touch with Damon rather quickly. And let me tell you, the subscribership to the channel, that helps us be able to pull these powerful brothers on the platform. Blessing to know that I know Malik. Man, I run into you in the gym all the time. You ain't been in the gym in a while, Malik. You need to get back in that gym. All right, I ain't see you in a minute. All right, don't stop. But what I will tell you, brothers, is that thank you so much, because this helped a lot of people.
Yes.
You know, at the stage that I'm at in my faith right now, it's one thing for me to get, you know, the spiritual truth that I always strive for daily. But this historical truth, man, I find that it does something a lot different to my soul, man. It empowers me in a way different way. And I want to bring that to the audience. So I seen the Moors in the chat. We listening, we taking heed, and we gonna keep bringing you guys deeper in your faith as well, and really finding truth-seeking answers and taking you guys on the journey with us. For those of you who want to continue to contribute to the platform, shout out to everybody that sent the super chat. Shout out to everybody that sent a super chat. We love you guys.
Donations coming in. Jess J, Valencia, Naomi, Bree, Alexis, Anthony, Will, Cassandra, on and on. Shout out to Sandra Holloway, who just every couple months just bless the platform tremendously, which allows us to do really, really big things.
Yes, and for those of you who want to continue to do so, here on the screen is how you continue to pour into what Hardly Initiated is doing and bringing to the world. We coming back to you to Wednesday at 8 p.m. For those of you who still confused, it's every Monday and Wednesday night at 8 p.m. We're going to let y'all chill on Christmas, because Christmas on a Wednesday this year. But other than that, we love you guys, and y'all already know how we do it.
Wait,
what we got?
I almost forgot, guys. We are launching another YouTube channel. Wow. Our second venture together when it comes to the YouTube space and media space. So please, all you got to do is check the description. Go ahead and subscribe now. And this one is going to be solely dating activations.
Where can they subscribe?
They subscribe. All you got to do is click the link in the description. It's gonna have everything you need there. You can go ahead and subscribe. I don't even think we got the logos and graphics up yet, but it's coming. We're gonna have our first episode coming up as well.
And it's called Hardly in Love, y'all. So y'all gonna see. Y'all know the dating space. That's how we started. We kind of shifted a bit, as me and Ryan is growing in our faith, and we wanted to really bring you guys some substance. It's funny how we got to faith, because we went just about everywhere we could in dating and relationships, and we realized the reason y'all dating lives sucks is because your soul ain't right. Right? So we started getting deeper into the faith, but we got some really fun dating activations. It's going to happen Thursday night at 8 p.m. That's going to be on a separate YouTube channel. So go ahead and join us over there if y'all want to have a good time and watch us date, match, do some different things. See us in a way y'all haven't seen before. But listen, I love you guys. Excited to see you guys on Wednesday and Thursday. But y'all know how we do it. Hardly Initiated. We are out.